Hello, 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 folks. How are we all doing this weekend? I hope everybody's having a good day so far. It is a beautiful day where I live, and we're going to get started here in about 1 minute. So I will see you shortly. Alrighty, hello everyone. How we doing? Hope everybody is having a good day so far. Good to see you. Why do I have my sweater zipped up so much? All right. Hi, folks. Hey, Matthias. Hey, Celeste. Hey, Shaxbeard. Good to see ya. How's my audio, folks? Can y'all hear me okay? Good to see everybody. Fantastic. Perfect. Okay. Good stuff. The reason I ask that ever so often is my computer likes to randomly adjust the input levels on my microphone. So every time before I go live, I have to reset them because my computer just picks a level and decides to run with that. So yeah, I always have to check and make sure. I don't know why it adjusts it, but it does. So okay, folks. Yeah, so we're gonna continue our Python series that we've been doing. I believe we're on part 5 now, which is pretty wild. Um, and so yeah, we're gonna keep going with Python and give folks a few minutes to get in here. It seems like it's always a little bit of a trickle effect. Folks come in over the course of a few minutes, so we'll just kind of stall for a couple minutes here. Hey, KP2, good to see ya. Computer audio math.random. Yeah, it really seems that way. Like I just checked it before I went live, and my computer had my microphone input set at 58, like out of 100, and just for no particular reason, I didn't do that. It just does it. So I have no idea. KP, he said, "You're here to absorb and see all the knowledge slide right off." You know what? I kind of see it like, well, you might describe it like water off a duck's back, like it slides right off. But the thing is that yeah, most of the water might slide right off, but a little bit of it is always going to stick. So a duck in the water is never fully dry. A duck in the water is always going to be a little bit damp. You know, and so, even if you aren't quite ready to absorb all the knowledge yet, a little bit of that knowledge is going to stick with you. And so, when you are ready to absorb it, you'll find that you already have a good starting point because you've already heard some terms before, or you've already seen how to approach some of the tasks, right? And so, it'll be a little bit easier to pick up when you are ready to fully absorb it. So, none of this is, wasted effort or wasted time, even if you're not quite ready for it yet. It's all useful because it's exposure. So I never see it as wasted effort if people say, "Oh, well, I just started. I'm not gonna learn anything." Yeah, you are. You're gonna pick up some vocabulary. You're gonna pick up, some general approaches to solving a problem, right? So it's never wasted effort. Hey, Iced Fire, good to see ya. Hi, folks. Mindry, welcome. They say, how can you practice thinking like a programmer in ways to solving complex problems? Yeah, so I think one of the best approaches you can take to start thinking like a programmer is managing frustration. Because, programming is pretty much unimaginably complex, right? It can be as easy or as hard as anything. There's no limit to how easy or how hard you can make a programming challenge, right? Or how complex a program can be, or how many languages there are, or how many different ways you can approach something, or even how many different vocabulary words or different syntaxes there can be for like one, type of thing, right? And so it's pretty much the possible permutations are pretty much unimaginable. And so the best way that you can approach a programming problem of any kind, whether it's in an interview or whether it's in a personal project or analyzing legacy code or anything like that, is just to go into it and manage your frustration, because you're going to hit roadblocks, you're going to get errors, and perseverance is going to be your best friend. It's going to be, okay, I don't know how to do this right now and I'm not making any progress, so I'm going to go Google some stuff, or I'm going to take a break. Oh my goodness, RDT, thank you so much for the sub. It's great to have you here. Thank you so much. Thank you. I know your name's not Kevin, but I triggered that alert manually. So thank you so much, RDT. Good to have you here. But yeah, so managing frustration means taking breaks when you need to. It means being kind to yourself. It means taking the necessary time to solve a problem. It means being comfortable with failure. It means knowing how to Google. It means knowing how to ask for help. And that is how you can think like a programmer and approach a problem you've never seen before and take the time and effort needed to solve it. So there's no, magic formula to this. It's, anybody can learn to code, but it takes the right mindset to do it. And that right mindset is going to involve being comfortable that there's no such thing as perfection, being comfortable with not knowing how to do something, being comfortable with asking others for help. And that can be a big challenge for a lot of people. I know that I grew up, the way that I grew up was very much like, straight A type overachiever, never ask for help because that means showing weakness, and never show that you don't know something. She'd always try to be the best and the smartest in the room, and that's not a healthy way to approach life in general necessarily. So it's been a good mindset shift for me to learn those skills and to learn how to troubleshoot and Google and ask others for help, and that's really the best way to approach programming in general. I hope that helped answer your question. Hey, hop out anew. Welcome to the stream. Good to have you here. Oh my goodness. Hey, Divker. Good to see you. Howdy, howdy. Divker's the best, by the way. They're awesome. No worries, Matthias. Divker's my favorite mod, too. The manual trigger for my sub alerts is Kevin. I know, it's great. Yeah, exactly, KP. That's a good mindset to have. It's okay to still be on class 4 and 5, and it'll just happen as it goes. Yeah. You can't rush knowledge. I mean, that's just not the way our brains work. As much as we like to tell ourselves in college that you could spend one night and cram and learn everything you needed for the exam the next day, you could just pull an all-nighter and you'll be fine. That's not actually how learning works, unfortunately. Hey, Mattel, good to see you. Ours just arrived and you're already dropping facts. That's what I do. I'm here for the facts. Oh, that's awesome, Matthias. Yeah, that's great. All right, I'm gonna take a quick hydrate here, and then we'll get started. But yeah, we're continuing our Python series. We're talking about files and lists, and this is the part I'm really excited about of this whole thing. We're starting to get into the meat of what Python is really good at, and what Python is really good at is taking in large amounts of data, large amounts of just raw, unprocessed data, and getting insights out of that data. And this is where we start to get into some really unique use cases of Python, and the kind of thing that I want to use it for. And we'll talk more about that as we get into it. But okay, 1 second. Love you, Dipker. Ice says, I'm going through CS50 and CS50P the last couple months, so this is nice. Oh, that's rad. Yeah. That's awesome that you're doing CS50. For those of you who don't know, CS50 is a fantastic course that is offered by Harvard, and it's a free course. So computer science in a more like collegiate format, so approaching it from as if you were taking a college computer science course. So more theory based, but I mean, still valuable, like just a different approach, right? More theory based, data structures and algorithms. And learning it from a collegiate perspective. But the nice thing is it's free. CS50 is a free course. Anybody can take it at any point. And I think it's a really valuable resource that Harvard provides. So if you're interested in getting the collegiate university style computer science approach without having to spend college money, I would recommend the CS50 course. And it looks like they have a Python course too. That's rad. Very cool. Matthias says, I didn't learn anything. May I still join? Absolutely. Anybody can join. Hars says, does this course cover programming essentials from a Python perspective, or does it go deeper into the language? I'm not entirely sure what you're asking there, but I mean, it's essentially this course right here. If you're talking about the course here on the screen, Python for Everybody, which is what we're doing, the course we're going through, this course focuses on approaching Python as if maybe you've never coded before. So exploring sort of the basics of coding from a Python perspective. So variables, strings, loops, etc. And that's kind of what we've covered in parts 1 through 4 of this series is, sort of the basic tenets of programming from a Python perspective. And now, as we start getting into these later lessons, this is going to get into stuff that is kind of unique to Python, how Python manages, file intakes, working with web services in Python, object-oriented programming in Python, databases, data visualization, the stuff that Python is really good at and uniquely good at, is going to be kind of the latter half of this course. Free is always good. Absolutely. There's so many wonderful resources out there for learning to code. It's really, you should, if your goal is to just learn how to code, you should never pay. Honestly, there's so many wonderful free resources out there. Free Code Camp, the Odin Project, CS50, 100 Devs, which I'm associated with, and all these wonderful free resources that can give you what you are going for. If a degree is not your goal, that's perfectly fine. You can still get a job without a degree or with a degree in something different. You don't need a CS degree to get a job, and so why pay money, right? Palooza says, is there a tip for not getting lost in my code every time I take a break or toy with the code, trying to find a solution to whatever thing I'm stuck at? I tend to be lost and it takes me a few minutes to know where I'm standing. Comments are good. If you can comment your code, if you take a break, before you take that break, just put a comment in your code and remind yourself what you were trying to do. Be like, hey, this function doesn't work yet, but it's meant to do XYZ. And, to do, like, there's even an extension for VS Code that you can install that will make your comments different colors depending on keywords. So for example, in my VS Code, I have that extension configured so that if I write a comment that starts with to do, like TODO, to do, it colors it a different color. So I know, okay, this is a line, this is an area where I need to do some more work. But yeah, just comment your code and that'll help out a lot. Oh, no worries, Hars. Yeah, no worries at all. All right, folks, let's get started. We're going to dive right in. First thing we're going to do is just a brief review. So when we ended the stream, hey, Alpha Logos, welcome. Good to have you here. And thank you so much for the follow, Elf, as well as A7. Thank you so much for the follow. Corey Sutton, Ricta100, Big Head 1, J. Brad Coder, Edmar97, and Blue Moon Streaming, Santo, Elif, Vapu, CSB. Thank you so much for the follows, folks. Really appreciate it. But first thing we're going to start out today is with a brief review. So when we left off the stream last week, not yesterday, last week, we had finished covering strings, but we didn't do the review materials like the quiz, and we didn't do the exercise. So we're gonna start off the stream doing that. And you might say, well, why do we do that? Because we covered the material last week. Why are we going back? Well, that's one of the most important things you can do when you're learning something new. And it's called active recall and spaced repetition. And what that means is that With spaced repetition, you're going back and revisiting things you've already learned to try to build permanent pathways in your brain, right? If you just cover something once, no matter how important you think it is, your brain doesn't feel the same way. It's not going to build those physical pathways for something you're only ever going to use once. And it's going to immediately discard that information and use those resources in your brain for something else. It's about energy conservation. And so the more we revisit this stuff over a period of time, the more likely our brain is going to say, okay, this is actually important. I need to devote resources. I need to connect these neurons together, physically connect them together, and permanently store this information in long-term memory. So that's why we do spaced repetition. And then active recall is where we actually take this information we've learned and apply it. So we're going to do a quiz. We're going to think critically about the information that we've learned. We're going to test ourselves a little bit. And we're going to do an exercise that's going to make us actually type some code and apply what we've learned to see how much we've retained. Okay, so we're going to start out with the quiz. And if you didn't join us last week, that's fine. You can still take the quiz with us. And, you know, give us your best guess. What do you think? If you know any other programming languages, you'll probably be able to muddle through this quiz to some degree. And you might be surprised how much you can get right, even if you've never looked at Python before. Oh, thank you, Elf. That's very kind of you. Last time on Claire's Corner of the Internet. Yeah, 100%. Yep. Mattel says, I need to apply what I've learned several times before it really sticks. Yeah, exactly. And that's just the nature of learning. That's how learning works. All right, so we're going to take our quiz first. And first question, what does the following Python program print out? So string 1 is set equal to hello. String 2 is set equal to there. They really need a General Kenobi in there, but they didn't do that. So string 1 is hello, string 2 is there, and then Bob is equal to string 1 plus string 2, and then we print Bob. So will it print A, 0, B, hello, space there, C, hello, or D, hello there with no space? Yeah, I can make it larger. So what does this print out? Seeing a couple D's. We're saying hello there, no space. Yeah, hello there, hello there. Okay. Yeah, and also too, as we're doing this quiz, if you have a different, if people are saying one answer and you think it's a different answer, that's fine. Go ahead and say, say whatever you think the answer is, because we're going to go through, why we think our potential guesses are correct or not correct, and we'll kind of just think through it critically. So there's no bad guesses or answers here. All right, I'm seeing a consensus on D, and I think I would agree with that because when we use a plus sign, so just like in JavaScript, when we use a plus sign between two strings, it's going to essentially concatenate those two strings together, right? And in this case, our knee-jerk reaction might be to say, oh, well, it's hello there with a space because that looks better. But we have to be very literal about what the code is doing here. And there are no spaces in the initial declarations, right? Neither of these two variables contains a space in the string. So when we concatenate them together, it's going to be just hello there with no space. Exactly. As Mattel said, it only does exactly what you tell it to do. Right. Yep. Okay, question 2. What does the following Python program print out? X is equal to 40, and then Y is set equal to X as an integer plus 2, and then we print Y. So X is declared as a string with the numbers, 40, so 40 in it as a string, and then we set int X plus 2. What is that going to print? Is it going to print A, int 402, B, 42, C, 402, or D, X2? All right. Y'all are quick. Yes. I think this is, yeah. So the consensus that I'm seeing is B. So 42. Yep. And I would think I would agree with that because we declare x as a string initially, but then we convert it to an integer. And because this is a valid integer, and an integer meaning a number with no decimal places, Python says, yeah, actually, that can be converted into an integer, no problem. And so when we have two numbers and we use the plus sign between them, that is going to be interpreted as math rather than concatenation. So two strings would be concatenation, but two numbers gets interpreted as math. So that's going to be 42. I would agree. Thank you so much for the follow, Zero Cold. Good to have you here. Hope you're having a good day. Alrighty, so question 3, how would you use the index operator, so two square brackets, to print out the letter Q from the following string? Okay, so x is equal to, this is a string, and it says from space marquard at uct.ac.za, and we want to find the letter Q. So our choices are, we print x9, print xq, print x-1, print x7, or x8. And if we have to count, if you need to count characters here, that's fine. Let's see. All right, so letter Q. And essentially, remember, we can treat a string as an index, right? So we can, or a string is like an array, just like we would in JavaScript. So we can kind of count index values to find the specific value that we want to return. So if we start now, I'm seeing folks saying a couple of different answers here. So let's kind of talk through this a little bit. I'm seeing some folks saying A, some folks saying E. So let's kind of talk through it. If we're looking at a string and we want to count to a specific index, what value do we start with? If we're in a string and we want to count to a specific value, what index do we start that count at? Yeah, exactly. We start at 0, right? So let's start at 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, don't forget the space, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, I'm seeing that Q. It looks like it is at index 8 in the string. So I'm thinking that this is probably the last one here, letter E, unless anybody has a dissenting opinion, and that's fine too. But I'm thinking it looks like it's going to be E here. Now you're welcome to argue with me. I haven't done these quizzes before, so, and forgot about the zero-based index. Yeah, that's a tricky one, right? And I'm sure that's why that this question was being asked, because it's asking us to review something that is maybe a little bit trickier than how it looks at face value. Yeah, exactly. Right? Yep, little tricky. Okay. All right, question 4. How would you use string slicing? So as a quick reminder, we know that, in JavaScript, slicing is where you take an array and you can cut a chunk out of it. So you can select a specific chunk of an array. So starting at a particular index and ending at a particular index, you take that slice of all the stuff in between. And in Python, the format is a little bit different, but the concept is the same. So you use square brackets with a colon between them, and the left side of the value on the left of the colon in the square brackets is your starting index, and then the ending value is the index after the last value that you want to return. So with that in mind, we want to print out UCT from the following string. So again, same string, x is equal to from marquard at uct.az.za, and we want to return UCT. So we can kind of count here and see, but our choices are 15:3, 14:17, 14 divided by 17. I think we can rule that one out. 14:3, 14 plus 17. Again, we can rule that one out, or 15:18. So let's kind of count our indexes here. Yes, in JS we can slice strings, exactly. And this is literally the same concept here that we're looking at. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is, the answer for the last question. So we're at index 8 here, same as before. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And then the starter value is 14. So our answer is either going to be B, D, or really just B or D, right? Now, just by process of elimination, if these are the only answers we can choose from, B or D, which one is going to be correct? Yeah. Why do you think it's B, Elf? Yeah, it's going to need to be, as Mintel said, we're going to need number of characters after so I think it's adding up the count. Yeah, so the important thing to remember here is that the left side is our starting index. The right side is the value after, the index value after the end value, not inclusive. So the important thing to keep in mind here is that when we're slicing, both of the values on either side of the colon are going to be index values. So the one on the right has to be higher than the one on the left because we're grabbing a slice of the string. And since we know we're starting at index 14 and we have to use this colon notation, it's either going to be value B or value D. And since both of these are going to be index values and the one on the right has to be higher than the one on the left, it's going to have to be B. Yeah. So now I see why some folks might have said this one because they're like, oh, well, we're starting in index 14 and we're adding 3 to it. But what we're actually doing here is just giving sort of almost like coordinates on a map. So start point and the value after the end point. So if this is index 14, we're saying 15 and 16. Now you might say, okay, but why is this right? This is 14. Why isn't this one 16? Well, just the way that slice notation works, and this is true in JavaScript as well, the way that slice notation works is that you declare the starting index value, the U, but the ending value is the index value after the last character that you want to return. Okay? Blood Mirror says 15, 18. So remember, Blood Mirror, that we start at 0. Our index starts at 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 as our starter index, 15, 16. This is the last value that we want to return, so we add one more, and 17. Does that make sense, Blood Mirror? Because yeah, it's hard. I know that 0 index thing is gonna, it's gonna trip you up. That's why I'm spending more time on this one, because indexes are hard, and especially when you're combining indexes to slice something, it's a challenge. But yeah, I think the best answer here is gonna be 14, 17. SM says, what if the 16 is the last? Well, in that case, your slice is going to be even easier because you don't even need to include the right-hand value. So you would just have it be 14 and then a colon and then nothing on the right side because it would go to the very end of the string. So if you already know the end value of the index and you want to just okay, just give me the last 3 characters. If it stopped, if this didn't exist and it stopped at the T, then you could just do 14 and then colon nothing. Yeah. Or you could do the -1. Yep, that would work too. Alrighty. But hey, we'll see if we're right, right? We'll grade this and then we'll see if we got it right. And if we didn't, we'll figure out what we got wrong. Okay, question 5. What is the iteration variable in the following Python code? So for letter in banana, colon, and then we say print letter. So what is the iteration variable in that statement? So we have a for statement here for, letter in banana, do something. So what is the iteration variable? Is it A, banana, B, for, C, letter, D, in, or E, print? Yeah, folks are saying C, letter. Yeah, I think I would agree with that. So if we think about what this is asking, this is an iteration statement, right? Iteration means that we repeat, we loop, we do something over and over and over and over again. And the iteration variable is the variable that specifically controls how many loops we do. So for example, if you were writing this in JavaScript, you'd probably say for I in where I is less than 10 or whatever, and that I value, that iteration, is going to control how many times the loop actually occurs. So in this case, our iterator is letter because the number of letters in the word banana controls how many times this loop will actually run. It's going to run until it runs out of letters in banana. So in this case, the iteration variable is going to be letter. Yeah, exactly. There's no let in this case because Python doesn't declare variables that way, but it's the same concept. Elf said, would that print 6 times? Well, it's going to print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what it's going to do each time is it's going to print the individual letter that it's currently looping through. So you're going to still get the word banana, but it's not all going to be on one line, right? Because we're not saying print banana, we're saying print letter. So let's do this one real quick. It's super simple. We'll just illustrate this real quick. Let's start up the interpreter here. For letter in banana. Oops, I forgot the colon. Hang on. This is good practice for me too. And I can't spell banana either. Banana. Ugh. Okay, colon. Print letter. There we go. So because each loop is looping through each individual letter in the word banana, so each time, each iteration of the loop is going to print the letter it's currently looping through. Nanner. Yeah. That's bananas. Yeah, it's not going to be on the same row. It's going to be on individual lines. So this is loop 1, loop 2, loop 3, loop 4, loop 5, etc., etc. Okay? Yeah. Okay, next one. What does the following Python code print out? So print and then len, the word banana, times 7. So it's basically saying print length of banana times 7. So is it going to print it out 0 times, 42 times? Is it just going to print out the word banana over and over and over again? Or is it going to print out banana 7? What do we think? Folks are saying 42. Also, the answer, 42 is a pretty safe guess because it's the answer to life, the universe, and everything. If there's any other Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fans out there. But yes, I think I would agree with this. Indeed. Yeah, I think I would agree with this because it's saying, all right, take the string banana, get its length. So the length of the word banana is 6, as we've kind of already explored. And then multiply that by 7. So when we do that, it's going to be 42, and then we're going to print that. I need to sneeze. 1 second. Alrighty. Yeah. I do like this answer. I really do like this answer because it's fun, but I do think the correct answer is 42. And thanks, folks. Okay. Celeste says, I just turned 42 and that's what I keep telling people. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I regularly quote the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in daily life. I find the phrase "don't panic" ricocheting around my head quite a bit this week, for no apparent reason. But here we are. Elf says, I must say I never liked tests, but it's really fun for me right now. Oh, that's good. I'm glad you're having fun. That's, honestly, that's the way that tests should be, is that it should just be an exploration of your knowledge. It shouldn't be stressful. It should just be a way to explore what you know and what you might need to revise a little bit or review a little bit. And then you go and review it, and then do even better next time. Don't panic and carry a towel. Yeah. Don't want to be a hoopy frood. Doesn't know where his towel is. RDT says, I read the book but still have yet to see the movie. In my opinion, the books are much better. I mean, the movies, there's been many adaptations of Hitchhiker's Guide to varying degrees of success, but in my opinion, the book is still the best adaptation. All right, question 7. How would you print out the following variable in all uppercase in Python? So we have the variable greet, and that is set to hello Bob. So how would we set this to uppercase? So print UC and then $greet, puts greet.ucase, print greet.upper, or console log greet.toUpperCase. The last one there is pure JavaScript. What do we think? We got a lot of folks saying C. Oh no, you're good. You're good, Elf. This is valid, but it would be valid. It's only valid in JavaScript, unfortunately. Yeah, so it's still valid, just the wrong language. And that can be a stumbling block as you learn more languages. You can start to get your syntax mixed up and, try to use something that's only valid in one language and apply it in another language. I went on a long rant a few streams ago about how every single language has different notation for comments. And I cannot remember between languages how the frick to do comments in a particular language. Hey, Space! Welcome to the stream. Good to have you here. So yeah, syntax is tricky. But yeah, I believe in this case it's going to be C. I agree with the consensus here. So what we're doing here is we are calling a method on the string greet. So, and since we're calling this method, it doesn't take in any arguments. We're just calling it on this string here, and it's going to just convert it to uppercase. Yeah. Yeah, VS Code is pretty great. All right, question 8. Which of the following is not a valid string method in Python? So split, join, shout, or starts with. What do we think? Which is not a valid string method in Python? Split, join, shout, or starts with. This one's a little trickier because I actually don't think the lesson necessarily covered, all of this explicitly, but we can kind of do process of elimination here a little bit. And I'm kind of drawing on JavaScript knowledge here a little bit. I know that split and join are valid methods in JavaScript, and they have pretty general use cases. So, with split, we can split a string. With join, we can join it together. And also same with starts with. I feel like those are pretty universal. Shout is the only one that seems like an outlier here. So I think I'm going to agree with the consensus and say C. Now, if we get this wrong, we can obviously look it up in the Python docs. But I think I feel safe enough to kind of guess a little bit on this one. SM says, can I specify an argument to convert the first letter to uppercase? No, not using not by using the upper method here, but what you can do is kind of similar to the way you would do it in JavaScript, where you would do a slice on the string to retrieve the first letter and then, in uppercase that one. and then leave the rest of the string alone. So take the other slice, the other half of the string, or the other, all the rest of the letters, and then join those two back together. So you uppercase the first letter and then join the other two together. Yes, and strings are immutable in Python. So what you're doing each time you're working with a string is you're slicing up the original string, but what you're producing from that method is, or from that process, is then a new string, right? The original string remains the same. You're just building a new one. If we call it plays the song by Tears for Fears. Yeah, if we call a shout. Yeah. All right. Question 9. What will the following Python code print out? Yeah, and strings are immutable in JavaScript too, as far as I'm aware. So what will the following Python code print out? So again, we set our variable data equal to this kind of string we've been working with for a while. It says from Stephen and Marquard at uct.az.za, Saturday, January 5th, 9:14 in 2008. And so we set a new variable called pause for position, and we say data.find, and we're looking for a period or full stop or whatever you want to call it. And then we print essentially data, and then the index value is going to be pause plus 3. So this kind of goes back to a question that somebody asked before, is if we're doing a slice of a string, can we use like mathematical operations in that slice to return an index value? And the answer is yes, you can. I held off on answering that question because I wanted to get to this one. I did look at these just to make sure that there wasn't anything completely out of pocket. But yeah, so this one is essentially showing that you can do math on the right side of your index, or sorry, within your slice to return a particular index value. So by looking at this, is it going to return A, MAR, B, .ma, C, SAT for Saturday, or D, UCT? So let's go through this together because it's a little bit more complicated. So first off, let's see what's going to be put into pause. So data.find, and we're looking for a dot. So it's going to return, data.find is going to return the first instance of that dot. So there's several dots here, or periods, in this string, but find is going to return the first index, or for the first instance that it encounters, and it's going to return the first index essentially. So in this case, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so that's at index 12, and it's the dot. And then, so that's pause. And then pause plus 3 is going to be, 12 plus 3 is 15. And so 13, 14, and we stop at 15. So we don't return the R. So it's just going to be dot MA. It's just going to return this part of the string. Yeah, so it seems like folks were kind of saying either A or B, and it could have been either one of those two. I think it's going to be B. Yeah, I think it's going to be B here. Because, again, with slicing, we always start at the actual first index value, and that's the first character that we return. And then the second index, exactly, null recall, yes. So the first index is inclusive, if you want to think about it more in mathematical terms. The first index is inclusive, the second index is exclusive. So we do return the value at the first index, and we stop at the value before the second index. Yep, up to but not including. So left-hand value is pause, right-hand value is pause plus 3, so 12 and 15. If this value is at 12, we return it. 13, 14, and we don't return the value at index 15. It makes sense. This is amazing. Good to hear it, Space. Thank you so much for the follow, Chancium. Good to have you here. All right. So I think we're looking at .ma here. All right, last question. Which of the following string methods removes white space from both the beginning and the end of a string? A, string trunk, str trunk. B, I guess that's supposed to be white space, so WSREM for white space remove. C, RL trim. I'm assuming that means right left trim. Or D, strip. What do we think? No idea? RDT says D, maybe? What do we think? All of these seem like, vaguely valid words, right? But which one is the actual method, string method, that removes white space from both the beginning and end of a string? Space says A. Folks are saying D. Yeah, and Null says, I've seen trunk before, so I wasn't sure the Python method. Yeah, and that's valid. Trunk is, trunk is a kind of a common keyword across languages. It's a keyword that I use in SQL quite a bit as well. And so, that could be, but in this case, I am about 90% sure that it is strip. Strunk. It's a German strunk. Yeah. In this case, I'm pretty sure that it is going to be strip. I'll admit I'm not 100% sure on this one, but I do believe it's strip. Just because I don't think that so parts of these may be valid keywords like trunk or trim, but I don't think that like str trunk, I don't think that those combining of keywords, I don't think is valid in this case. Like RL trim, I don't think so. But trim itself, I believe, is one, but not RL trim. So let's go ahead and submit this and let's see how we did. And if we missed any, we can go and if we missed any, what we'll do is we'll go and do the exercise because the quiz won't let us retry it for 10 minutes. So we'll wait 10 minutes and then we'll come back and we'll do the quiz again. Oh, Devlin, welcome to the stream. They say it's RL trim. Okay, well, y'all got me questioning just enough. We got 100. We did? Did you work ahead? Did you work ahead, Null Recall? All right, let's see how we did. If we got it wrong, we'll do our research and then we'll go back. Hey, look at that. Good job, everybody. Roll the dice. Yeah. No, and that's a good point, TV Joss. They say everything is trim except Python is strip. Yeah, and trim is a really common keyword across multiple languages. Hey, Devlin, thank you so much for the follow. And Eugene, thank you for the follow as well. Good to have you both here. Hey, Hitachi, good to have you here as well. Welcome to the stream. They say, what's going on? Just got here. Well, Itachi, we just aced a quiz on Python on strings. And so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do an exercise. So even if you've never done Python before, you're welcome to stick around with us and, just hang out and absorb a little bit of the material. Yeah, good job, everybody. Yep. And Emperor Sean says strip trims both the end and the beginning. Exactly. So I'm not saying that, trim isn't a valid keyword. It is. But in this case, we have to be very careful about the wording of the question. So it wasn't saying trim. It was saying RL trim. Now, I believe that R trim and L trim are valid keywords or valid methods. Trim the right or trim the left, but not RL trim. So it's a very sneaky question. I agree. Yeah. Space says, I've never touched Python before, but this is my favorite way to learn. Yeah, we try to make it fun, even if you've never done Python before. Learning should be, low stress. It should be engaging and inclusive, and that's what we're going for here. Sneaky, sneaky, indeed. Techno says, hi, are you using AI much in your coding? I'd never use AI to write code for me. I use AI to troubleshoot my existing code or to do the things that, I already like. If I already know what I want, I just don't want to type it out, then I'll have AI like, type stuff for me sometimes. But I know exactly what the AI is going to write for me, and that way I can validate it, because AI gets things wrong all the time. It is consistently wrong, and it is adamant about being wrong. Like, it will insist that it's right. And so you should never go into AI, in my opinion anyway, you should never go into AI having no idea what you're going to get back. You should never ask AI to answer a question that you're completely unfamiliar with. You should have some level of familiarity with the result you're going to get, enough that you can validate the accuracy of the answer. Yeah. Yeah, and I use AI for troubleshooting a lot. Like code for work, like, if I've already written a SQL query and I've missed a semicolon somewhere, or if I missed a comma and I'm like, man, I know this is so close to being right. Like, I just need to figure out what grammar mistake I made or where my stupid missing comma is. Then I'll dump it into Copilot and I'll say, Copilot, hey, Copilot, tell me where I'm missing a comma here. And it'll tell me right away. So, hey, Bedro, welcome back. Good to have you here. El Rangel, thank you so much for the follow. Good to have you here. Yeah, so it should be a tool. It shouldn't be a replacement. That's the main philosophy when working with AI. It's a tool. It's like a hammer, right? You can't just have a hammer go off and do its own work. You have to be the one wielding the hammer. Yeah. All right. So good job on the quiz, everybody. Now let's go ahead and do the exercise. So this is going to test our knowledge of string slicing. So it says, write code using find and string slicing, see section 6.10, to extract the number at the end of the line below. Interesting. Convert the extracted value to a floating point number and print it out. Okay. So it looks like, let's see. We want to, okay, so they're wanting us to return, this is the value they want us to return, is the 0, or this decimal here. Convert it to a floating point number and then print it. All right, so we should be able to do this, I think. And I think we're going to be able to do it using one of the concepts that we talked about while we were taking the quiz, actually. So with the find, I think we can say, I almost typed let, like I was doing JavaScript. I almost typed let for my variable. I got to get used to just straight up just declaring variables without having to announce them first. So we'll say, substring equals, we should be able to find text.find. And we're going to find, I think we can just find the 0, right? Let's see, I'm going to actually declare this as pause. So text.find, we're going to find the 0. JS girl, exactly, right? Yeah. Text.find, we're going to find the 0, and that's going to give us the starting index of the slice we're going to return. So this is going to, say it's wrong, but I just want to print this out first. Actually, no, let's do it in the interpreter. We'll do it in the interpreter. Ooh, Daddy Bedro says, I'm looking into hacking Spotify car things so I can run a custom app on it. Yeah, actually, a lot of people are doing that. Since Spotify kind of dropped support for car thing, a lot of folks are kind of doing their own thing with car thing, which is kind of neat. All right, come on, paste. I just want to copy you. All right, there we go. Okay, so this, and then we're going to say, I'm going to print, we'll set that, and then we'll print pause. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that says that the 0 is at index 23. And then I want to essentially return everything from index 0 to the end of the string. Now, what's the easiest way for me to do that? What's the easiest way for me to do that? So I know I'm going to do a slice, and I'm starting at index 23. Well, I'm starting at index pause, but we know it's index 23. What's going to be my closing value here on this slice? We kind of talked about it before. What's going to be my closing value on the slice if I want to essentially start here and go to the end of the string? Yeah. So we don't have to put anything because we're going to the end of the string, right? So we don't need to give a closing value here. We could do -1 if we wanted, but we don't have to. We can leave this blank. So let's try that. And then I'm going to essentially print, I'm going to print essentially this substring, but I need to convert it into a float. They've told us we need to convert it to a float. So we're going to say print float substring. And that should give us what we want. Yeah. Fuel says a lot of AI providers want us to let AI take control of the computer. I don't think so. Yeah, Google, just something big from Google just leaked recently where they're going to have an AI that can control Chrome and like do stuff for you in Chrome. And I'm like, absolutely hell no. I don't, so I read a meme somewhere that was like, you know, everyday people will have, you know, a bunch of smart home devices and everything wired up. And then like developers have, you know, one printer that is 20 years old. And if it, you know, ever makes a funny noise, they'll hit it with a baseball bat. You know, just we don't trust these systems necessarily because we know how dangerous they can be. And like me personally, I don't have any smart home devices. Nothing in my home is wired up or smart in any way. All my appliances are like 20, 30 years old. You know, really the most high-tech thing in my house is my streaming setup right here. I don't have anything listening to me while I talk other than my phone, of course. I assume it's always listening. But like I don't have any smart speakers, I don't have any cameras, I don't have any of that stuff because I don't trust it. I love technology, but when it comes to technology in my home, I'm pretty careful about it. Elf says, do we need single or double quotes? With Python, it doesn't really matter. You can use either one. Hop Out says, will this be recorded? Yes, all my streams are recorded. You can find them on the videos tab of my Twitch channel, and before they expire, I will move them to YouTube, so you can watch them there as well. Okay, catching up. A stupid home is a safe home. Exactly. Yeah. My home is very much not smart. Yeah, gun next to the printer. Yeah, pretty much. The S in IoT stands for security. Yeah, there is no S, right? Yeah, Internet of Things is pretty awful all around. Yep. Need to be ready to shoot the printer if it makes noise. Right. All right, let's try this. Okay, so first I'm going to run it in the interpreter just to double check that we've done it properly. But so we already found, you know, POS is set to 23, and then we're going to set the value of substring. Oops. Oh, come on. It won't let me copy paste for some reason. There we go. All right, so value of substring. Now let's print that and see what we get. Yep. There's our number, and it's printed out. You notice there's no quotes around it, so it's not printed as a string. It's printed as a true float, which is exactly what the problem is asking for. So let's run it. Check. Hooray, we did it. Lo hicimos, we did it. Dora the Explorer. Yeah. Techno says, will AI take over manual coding in the long run, and all that's left is prompt engineering? No. I think AI will find its level. AI is not going to go away, but it's also not going to take over everything. It's going to find right now everybody's trying to shove AI into everything. And eventually it'll kind of settle. It'll settle down and it'll settle into the niches where it's actually useful. One of the few cases where I believe the free market will decide where AI is the most useful, and that's what what areas will get money and funding, and so that's where AI will live, is in the niches where it's actually providing value. It's just going to take a while to figure that out. But there's going to be so many places where AI is just not feasible, and humans will always be a part of that equation in terms of actually writing code. It's kind of like how, folks said, well, oh, when spreadsheets became a thing, like when Excel came on the scene, Microsoft Office, oh, well, humans, and nobody's ever going to need to do math again. Excel can do all the math for us, right? Excel can calculate everything. Well, no, it can't. People still do math all the time. So, it's just about, it's going to find its lane. It's going to find its level, just like any other tool. Yeah, and there's limits to, as Daddy Pedro said, or Bedro said, there's, so many limits to what AI can even output as well, in terms of languages or syntax or whatever. Icefire says, how would you do it if you didn't know the number started with zero? Yeah, it gets a little bit more difficult in that case. But you could still do it. I think you could still, you would have to look for the last instance. So if you kind of knew the general structure of the string, um, you could look for, say, like the last instance of a space. So you would be working from the right side of the string, right? Working from the right side of the string to the left side, and then you would basically go up until you reach the first space here, and then return this part of the string. I mean, that's just conceptually, that's probably how we could do it. Yeah, exactly. As Icefire said, you look for space. Yeah, we could do that as well. You could start from the left. You could look for the first space and then return everything through the end of the string. And then you could use it. Yeah, you could use ltrim to trim the leading spaces and return the number. Yeah, that's another great way to do it. Use ltrim. So you'd return this. You'd essentially grab all of this and then use ltrim to trim all the leading spaces, and then just return the number. Yep. There's always more than one way to approach a problem like this, and that's the cool part about coding, in my opinion. As Fuel said, and yeah, a good point as we're talking about AI. What most people who don't work as developers don't necessarily understand is that a big part of being a developer is not necessarily writing code. As a developer, I don't spend the majority of my time writing code. I spend the majority of my time trying to translate customer business requirements into actual like coding action items. Or revamping code somebody else has already written, or searching through code to find a bug, stuff like that. Like, I'm not necessarily writing code, I'm maintaining existing code, I'm working with customers, I'm sitting in meetings, I'm troubleshooting things. That's the majority. DC, thank you so much for the follow. Good to have you here. Mm-hmm. All right. Good job, everybody. We are done with strings. Perfect timing, by the way, too. So now we're actually getting into the good stuff here, folks. We are getting into the how we work with files in Python. And again, this is where Python shines. Python is just absolutely geared to do data crunching, like to take in raw files, to take in raw data, to take in large amounts of input data and give you insights about what's going on in that data. And a big part of that is taking in files. We call those flat files. So static files, things like text files or Excel spreadsheets, CSVs, XML, HTML, just raw files, taking in those files and drawing insight from what's in those files. So way faster than like you as a human could read that data, Python can loop through every single character in those files and tell you what's going on in it. And this is where I can see myself really heavily using Python. And, especially for a personal project that I'm working on for a local community organization, this is going to be extremely helpful. Being able to take in basically, hundreds of thousands of lines of XML, and, or sorry, not XML, HTML, taking hundreds of thousands of lines of HTML and stripping out very specific values from that HTML, and compiling that into a readable format. That's going to be a big use case for me. And I think this is probably actually going to be what we're going to do after we finish with this Python course, is we're going to immediately turn around and apply our new skills to an actual project. And I think that that's what that project is going to be. So we'll do that live on stream. Basically, I'm going to take a bunch of scraped HTML from a web page, and we're going to turn it into something that we can read as humans. It's going to be fun. Wolfgang, welcome to the stream. They say, then you're a product manager and owner? No, I'm not. I am a senior developer, but I personally don't own any of the projects that I work on. However, when I get assigned a ticket, right, when a customer says, hey, can you please put this field in this data set? Like, I need this field. And you're like, okay. So now I have to go meet with the customer, and I have to say, okay, so it sounds like you want this field in this particular data set. So what is going to be the source for that data? Where do you want that field to come from? Now I'm going to put it into this data set for you. Here's how I'm going to join those two things together and get that field on every record. Does that sound right to you? And what order do you want the fields in? That type of thing. And so all those conversations need to be hashed out with the customer before I write a single line of code. So you don't necessarily have to be a project manager to, have a large part of your job not be writing code. Techno says, I remember I had to code on paper for data structure exams. Is that a practice that's still done in academies and learning institutions? I took one coding class in college, Techno. This was about 12 years ago. I took one coding class in college. It was Java, and it sucked, and I hated it. And a big majority of why I hated it was because for all of our exams, we had to write things on paper. We had to write code on paper and remember our brackets and our semicolons, and writing it in pencil on lined paper, writing out functions, and having the proper format and everything. And it was terrible. It was awful. It really killed any interest I had in coding for years after that. I didn't pick up coding again until I actually had to learn it to do my job, when I was working as a data analyst. So yeah, to answer your question, as of 12 years ago, yes, and it sucked enough to almost change the trajectory of my life. Yeah, they do, Anna. Yep. Itachi says, do you have any project you're working on? Yep, I'm working on a project for a community organization, helping them to create a searchable database of a local cemetery for a historical local history museum. I've done a few streams on it on live here on Twitch about building the app, but I'm going to use Python to help me essentially scrape some data and then build that out into the structure of the database, which I'm then going to put into my SQL database and make it searchable in the app. Hey, Brown Skills, good to see you. Alrighty, folks. We're going to take a 5-minute break before we dive into files. I'm really excited about this one, folks, so please do stick around. This is going to be fun. We're actually going to read. We're going to take some files, and without us humans looking at the files at all, we're going to have Python dip into the files for us and pull out relevant information, which is pretty darn cool. So take a 5-minute break, get some water, get up and stretch, and then we're going to come back and get into the new material for today. Yeah, exactly, Fuel. Same here. My handwriting is terrible. Brown says, what type of files we're going to work on? Just text files for this, but you can use CSVs or whatever, really anything with readable data. You can parse with Python. Hey, Coding with Strangers, good to see you, my friend. Shout out to Coding with Strangers. There you go. Everybody give Coding with Strangers a follow. They're a pretty cool person. They do exactly what their name says they do. They learn to code live on stream with help from the community, and it's a really fun interactive experience. They're also a pretty cool artist. So yeah, give him a follow. Hope you're doing well, Cody. Cody says, "Did I miss the database part? We haven't got there yet, my friend. We're going through the lessons. We're on lesson 8, which is files, where we're going to be learning how to read files with Python. But the database part isn't until lesson 16, so we got a ways to go there." Alrighty. 5-minute break, folks, but do come on back as we learn how to parse files. Alrighty, folks, we got about a minute left in the break, so come on back if you're coming back. And as always, please make sure that you are staying hydrated, that if you've been sitting this whole time, that you change position, do some stretches, get up if you're able to do so. And as always, please pet your dogs, pet your cats, pet your significant other with their permission, of course, and then come on back. Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. No worries, Matthias. Good to have you here. Yeah, I would love to make that work, Matthias, as far as joining another social anxiety meetup. Those are always a lot of fun. If you're in 100 Devs, please consider attending those wonderful social anxiety meetups led by Matthias. They're really wonderful for learning strategies and socialization and getting better at the game we all play when we go to get a job, because it is a game in the end, and the better you know the rules and the more practice you have, the better you get at the game. And so it's wonderful practice. Yeah, I'd love to make that work, Matthias. Work has been kind of a nightmare for the past few weeks, so but I do want to make that work. Getting better at stuff, indeed. Cody says, "Look frantically for something to pet." Hey, you can always pat yourself and tell yourself, "Good job." Always a good thing to do now and then, in my opinion. All right, let's get into it. This is new material now, folks. As a reminder, we are using Python for Everybody, which is a free learning resource. It's a free course put together by Dr. Chuck at the University of Michigan, a professor. He's written several free courses. So I always want to give a shout out to him for all the time and effort he put in to put this course together. So I would highly recommend that you follow along and actually do the material as we're learning it here on stream. You should also learn it too if you're interested in learning Python. I would also recommend logging in. So you use your Google account to log in to the course. It will keep track of your progress. It keeps track of your scores on quizzes and completing exercises and that kind of thing. So really great automatic progress tracker. And also too, if you are, not everybody learns the same way, right? Some folks prefer to watch video summaries. Some folks like to learn live with me. Maybe you want to have slides to follow along with. We're going to be reading straight from the book version, but there's all sorts of other ways to learn this material, and it's all the same stuff. So no matter what your approach is to learning, this course will cover it for you. And there's even a discussion board. So if you want to discuss it with other folks who are taking the course, do some troubleshooting with them, then you might find the discussion boards valuable as well. Alrighty, let's get into it, folks. Let's talk about files. So, what we've done so far in the course has really sort of been working with data that we generate ourselves on the fly, right? We declare a string, we pass in a string, we take in some user input, that kind of thing, and then we immediately do something with that input, and we return a result, and then we're done. But what we're getting into with the course is working with data that's in long-term storage. So data that we can revisit later or modify and revisit later, that type of thing. And that's called persistence. So we've been working with the CPU, using conditional execution functions, iterations. We're storing, data structures in main memory. And we've been working with the CPU and memory because it's the brain of the computer, right? It's where our thinking happens and processing our logic and our functions. But once the power is turned off, anything stored in either the CPU or the main memory is erased. So up to now, our programs have just been transient, fun exercises to learn Python, right? It's just stuff that we use once and then we discard, or, it's not long-term in any way. However, now we're going to start working with the secondary memory, which is this part of the diagram here. Secondary memory is not erased when the power is turned off. Something like a flash drive, we can transport it to another system. We're going to primarily focus on reading and writing text files, such as those that we create in a text editor. Later, we'll see how to work with database files, such as binary files, specifically designed to be read and written through database software. Now, I'm also going to include something like a CSV or, an HTML file in the category of text files. Because it's just characters, right? It's human readable characters that we can parse as strings. Now, how do we open a file in Python? So if we want to read or write a file, we have to open it first, right? Seems legit. Opening the file communicates with your operating system, which knows where the data for each file is stored. When you open a file, you're asking the operating system to find the file by name, make sure it exists, and then we can start working with it. So we're going to open a file called mbox.txt. And if you want to follow along, you can grab this file from the link right here. So, you can go to this page, go to lesson 7, find this link, click on it, grab the data, save it in a file called mbox.txt, and just make sure that you save that text file in the same folder where you've been working with Python this whole time. So, for example, I have a folder where I've kind of been doing these exercises here in VS Code, and in the folder I have, a bunch of files, but I've also saved the mbox file in that folder. So anytime I'm working, in the terminal, I'm already CD'd into that folder and I can open any of these files. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to quit the interpreter here. And I'm just going to say, all right, Py, and I'm going to say, oh, actually, no, I am going to be in the interpreter. Sorry. Boop. There we go. I'm going to say fhand open mbox.txt. All right, and we can see that was successful. It didn't give me any errors. And I'm going to say print fhand. And when I do that, it gives me the same properties that we see here. So notice that when I say open, it's not actually like returning the data from the file itself. This is just the properties of the file. So we're used to, for example, if we go into something like Microsoft Word or Excel, if we say open a file, we're used to it immediately giving us the contents of the file. That's not exactly what we're doing here. Instead, it's just giving us the file handle. It's not the actual data. It's a handle that we can use to then read the data further. So essentially, we're given the handle if the requested file exists and you have the proper permissions to read the file. So it's almost like we're saying open the file, but instead of actually giving us the file contents, it's giving us a key to the file. It's saying, all right, yeah, you're allowed to see this information, so I'm going to give you this key, and then you can use this key to look at whatever part of the data that you want. Because, for example, you might say, well, why does it do that? Why doesn't it just give us the contents of the file? What might be a reason why it's not just going to spit out the whole contents of the file if we say open file? Why do you think it does this and basically says, hey, okay, you have permission to do stuff with the data in this file? Why doesn't it just spit out the whole file contents at us? What do we think? Why doesn't it do that? Or what's some reasons that it might not do that? Les says maybe the file is too big. That could be a reason, right? What if it's a 5 gigabyte file? Do we want it to print out like 5 gigabytes of text in our terminal? What would that look like? That would be insane. You couldn't work with that in any degree, right? And Coding with Strangers kind of refines that a little bit. They say operation-based response. Yeah, so it's kind of like, okay, it's saying, all right, you have the permissions to read this, but it's giving us the opportunity to refine our instructions to say like, okay, now we're in the file. What specifically do we want to do with it? We could ask it to print the contents. That's a valid thing we could do. But maybe we don't want to. We don't always want to see the contents, especially if you're working with Python. You're probably working with really large files and you want to do very specific things with the contents of those files. And so maybe you only want to get, the count of a certain keyword, right? Maybe that's all you care about. Maybe you want to extract all the email addresses from the file and only print those. So it's giving us the opportunity to then say, all right, you have this key. Now, what specifically do you want to do with the information in this file? Thank you so much for the follows, folks. Wolfcan, Golfs Go, Skeet Sense, Coffee Tetris. Coffee and Tetris. I love that name. That's great. Thank you so much for following. Glad to have you here. And Silly, welcome to the stream. They say it could be, yeah, that's another great point. A format that cannot be displayed in a terminal. Sure. yeah, the file could be in binary or something that is not conducive to humans reading the information, right? It would mean nothing to us. We would need to process it further to get insights out of it. So no need to display it unless we specifically ask Python to display the contents. So if we don't have access to the file, we will get an error, something like this. And then we can use try and except to, handle these types of errors gracefully later on. But for now, we're not going to worry about that. All right, so a text file can be thought of as a sequence of lines, just like a Python string can be thought of as a sequence of characters. So instead of, if you think about it in terms of like an array, instead of individual characters being the elements of the array, in a file, we would think about individual lines of the file being the elements. So, for example, this is a sample of a text file which records mail activity from various individuals in an open source project development team. And the entire file is available here, which we've already copied. And then there's a shortened file, which is here. I have both of these files saved in my folder here, so we can access either one of them. And the files are in a standard format. The lines which start with from separate the messages, and the lines which start with from : are part of the messages. So to break the file into lines, there's a special character that represents the end of the line called the new line character. Hey, Maniac, good to see you. Yeah, and Les gives another good point why we don't necessarily want to see the full file. Maybe we don't want to read it all. We just want to add stuff to it. Yeah, Python doesn't know what we want to do with that file. They're just saying, hey, all right, I'm ready to do stuff with this file. You tell me what to do. In the file, any text file, at the end of each line, there's essentially there's an invisible kind of a character which is going to indicate a new line. And we've actually seen this before. We've used this before in some of the earlier exercises. For example, if we were asking for user input and we wanted to say, all right, please input, phone number, and then we wanted to force a new line character after that, you can use this /n value to force the display of a new line. So when we look at the variable by entering stuff in the interpreter, it shows us the /n in the string, but when we use print to actually show the string, we see the string broken into 2 lines, and this character is not displayed. So for example, here we can see that the variable stuff is equal to hello and then /n world. But then when we actually print that value, it prints as hello, line break, world. Okay? So the length of, and also notice that the length of this string, x/ny, is 3 characters because the new line character is considered a single character. So that's something to remember as well, is that this value here is considered to be a single character. It just means this is a new line and it's considered to be a single character because these 2 values work together to perform a single action or should display a single character, which is a new line. And you'll see that a lot. If you've worked in JavaScript or something, you've seen special characters like this too. They aren't always visible, but they can be used for specific formatting reasons. The one that always gets me is the non-breaking space. That one always gets me, especially in the kind of work that I do. It's we had an issue with that a while back. It's like because what was happening was. We had a non-breaking space essentially visually to the eye. If you print it out, it looks like nothing. It looks, you could have a single word, banana, and it would look like one word, but it could have a non-breaking space in between 1 or 2 of the letters. And so if you were to print it out literally with those special characters visible, there would be extra characters in there. And so, yeah, it kills me. It kills me as a data engineer. So how do we read files then? Knowing that files are broken apart by these special, new line characters, how do we read or loop through files? So the file handle does not contain the data for the file, but we can create a for loop to read through and count each line in a file. So the first thing we always do is we open the file, and we can set a count variable, and then we can loop through each line in that file. So each time we loop through it, we add 1 to our count, and then we can print a line count at the end. So let's go ahead and do that really quickly, just to see what that looks like. All right, so I could have saved this as a script file, but I didn't, so we're going to just do it in the interpreter here. There we go. So when we print that, we can see it's opened up the file and it's looped through the file looking for those new line characters. And each time it hits one of those, it loops back to the beginning and it counts that as a line. So the line count in our file is actually 1909. So 1,909 lines, which is quite a few. It counts the number of lines in the file and it prints them out. So for each line in the file represented by the file handle, add 1 to the count variable. So, and as we kind of talked about before, as some of you speculated, the reason that the open function does not read the entire file is that the file might be very large with many gigabytes of data. The open statement takes the same amount of time regardless of the size of the file. The for loop is what actually causes the data to be read. And that's really important to remember, is that the open is not reading the data. It's basically just saying, all right, yep, you can access this file and you have the permissions to do stuff with it. It's not doing anything with it yet, including reading it. It doesn't know what's in the file. It doesn't care. Once we initiate some kind of read of the data, like a for loop or a find or anything like that, that's when the data is actually being read from the file. So Python splits the data into separate lines using the new line character. And then it includes the new line as the last character in the line variable for each iteration of the for loop. Dan says it's just a verbal agreement, practically meaningless. Yeah, pretty much. Yep, it's just basically saying, yep, you can get in here, but you don't have to. So because now here's another important point is no matter how large the file is, our for loop is only going to read 1 line of data at a time. So it doesn't really matter how large the file is. It's just still going to only take it 1 line at a time, which is a good approach for any problem, right? Oh, thank you for the stretch. Yeah. But I mean, if you think about it, that's a great approach to any problem. It doesn't really matter how big the problem is, as long as you approach it 1 step at a time, or you break it down into smaller pieces and tackle each piece individually. And in that case, it doesn't really matter how large the problem is. You can still tackle it 1 piece at a time. And that's exactly how Python approaches reading large files, 1 line at a time. It can efficiently read and count the lines in very large files without running out of main memory to store the data. So each line is read, counted, and then discarded. So I feel like this is kind of like a life philosophy here, and that everybody should, approach problems this way. Just take it slow, folks. If you know the file is relatively small, you can read the whole file into a single string using the read method on the file handle. Oh, Coding asks, how important is it to be comfortable working in the terminal? I've recently started using it more to perform scripting tasks. I picked this up doing Node.js. Yeah, that's a great question. I will say that being comfortable in the terminal is a great skill to have, because in many languages, it lets you get closer to what you're actually working with. And there's nothing wrong with using GUIs. Like, GUIs are great, but working in the terminal often lets you do more faster, because you're stripping away those levels of user interface that often add overhead in terms of processing time. They often have limited features. They're gonna have fewer features often than you can do just by working in the terminal. And so you have more flexibility. You often have faster execution directly in the terminal. And, for example, like doing these little exercises that we're doing right now, I could create a file for each one. I could save it as a script and then I could run that script. But in this case, it's just faster to type the commands, right? So sometimes it's going to be faster, better processing time, less overhead, and more options to work with. For example, at work, we use Git. At work, we use Git to track our code files, which is great. I'm used to working with Git in the command line. So just straight from the terminal, do all my Git commands there. Most of my coworkers use the VS Code Git interface, so the GUI, which again is fine. They both get the job done. But one thing I've noticed is that the VS Code interface is noticeably slower in terms of like just doing Git operations. It's noticeably slower to do the same thing in Git in the GUI than it would be to just do it in the command line. And I've done both. So, it's interesting to see that, as you add more layers or more levels of obfuscation between you and what you're actually working with, things tend to get slower. So, working with the terminal is not a requirement by any means, but it can sometimes be a lot faster and easier once you get over the fear factor of typing commands directly into the terminal. Once you become a lot more comfortable with it, you start to find some, patterns and use cases that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do otherwise. Yeah. Celise says Rust would be better. Maybe so, but I'm working with Python in this case for, because it's going to be very useful for me at my work, at my job. So that's one thing I always say to people is like, we can debate all day about which programming language is better, right? Which one is the best? And the answer to that question is always going to be no programming language is ever the best. It all depends on what are you trying to do specifically? What problem are you trying to solve? Hardly any of us ever, just learn a language for giggles. And you might, which is great. That's fine. But most of the time we approach the process with a problem in mind or a project in mind. And you want to pick the best language for specifically what you are trying to do. And so in my field, Python is by far the most common language for solving the types of data problems that I'm trying to solve. And so that's why for me, Python is the right tool for the job in this case, which is why we're learning it. Hey, Jin, welcome to the stream. Thank you so much for the follow. Hey, glad you're wanting to learn coding. That's awesome. Very cool. Yeah, so as far as where to start, I would suggest it depends on what field you want to get into, Jen. Do you want to are you interested in back end? Are you interested in front end? Are you interested in full stack, data engineering, data science? Are you interested in web page design? Heck, email design? Your field is going to kind of determine the approach that you take. And then also you should research your local area where you live and what's in demand, what languages or fields are in demand in your area, where, who's hiring, what are they looking for in terms of a stack, in terms of a skill set. And that might also determine your approach as well. So it's going to be part passion, part demand, especially if you're trying to break into the industry. That's going to kind of dictate what you learn. Now, as far as what program you do to get there, like where you get your skills, there's a lot of wonderful free resources out there. So don't pay $10,000 for a boot camp. I'm begging you, please don't. There's so many wonderful free resources out there that can teach you a variety of languages. So for example, this course is free that we're taking, this Python for Everyone course, and it's not the only course in this series. There's also a course on Postgres. There's also a course on C++. There's also a course on I'm spacing PHP. This guy has written several free courses with several different languages. And then there's also programs like Free Code Camp or the Odin Project. And there's the program that I'm affiliated with, which is 100 Devs. You can do ! 100 Devs to read more about that. All these are free, and you can really, take whatever approach you want, but try to tailor it to the demand in your area and to the, to where you eventually want to end up in the programming space. Damn way. Hey, Techno. Um, they said, "Are you doing remote coding? How's your work routine?" Yeah, I'm fully remote. A lot of tech jobs are, unfortunately, less than there used to be, but yeah, I'm fully remote. Data engineer, senior data engineer, and I work with backend and databases. That's what I really like to do. Behind the scenes type data engineering stuff. I have a data analysis background, and so it was very natural for me to become a developer that works primarily with databases and data warehouses. So, yep, that's my jam. Are you doing the Odin project now? That's awesome. Cool. Yeah, Odin project is a great resource. Free code camp. It's another one. 100 devs. All good stuff. Hey, that's awesome, Jin. Yeah, well, if you're interested in web development, you should check out 100 Devs. Several folks have RPG Ash. Thank you so much for being here. Good to have you here. Check out the website there. That's a little farther up in the chat that my bot just posted. 100devs.org/about. That will take you straight to the Discord. We have a huge Discord. There's like 40, 50,000 members on the Discord, super active. We do regular, you can, all the course resources are for free. There's folks that'll help you through each step of the way, help you with the homeworks. And it's also a huge component of 100 devs is getting a job. So after you learn how to code, how do you get a job? We do live sessions twice a week on interviewing, on negotiation, on the hiring process, on networking, all those things. And yeah, pretty much it's kind of meant to hold your hand through learning how to code and then getting a job afterwards. Techno says, any certification for 100 devs? Nope. Unless you're doing something like networking or security, certs really don't matter. We in 100 devs, we tend to say that you can get a cert if you really want, but it's, you might as well just take it and burn it, because certs really don't mean much unless you're in a very specific field, something like security or like Microsoft Azure or AWS. And in those cases, your employer should be paying for that certification. Hopefully by then you already have a job, and then if you want to get into something like Azure or AWS, your employer is going to pay for the cert. So yeah, 100 devs really doesn't have a certification because it's not really necessary. I don't have any certifications. I don't have one. I've never needed one. And most people don't. Yeah. But yeah, Jinzunia 100 devs is specifically for web development. We do the MERN stack, MongoDB, Express, Node, React, JavaScript, etc. Yeah. So sounds right up your alley. Is the channel Learn with Leon and Friends? Yes. But on the if you're talking about the Twitch channel, Leon isn't currently streaming on Twitch right now, so you won't see any new videos there. But if you head to the Discord, and then go to the New Need Help channel, folks will be able to help you out and hook you up with the materials. Also, the companion website is what I'm going to put in chat. communitytaught.org. That is a very similar kind of a site to what we're using for this Python course. It has all the course materials, all the homeworks, but I would highly suggest that you pair that with the Discord. So hang out on the Discord, talk to people, get help on the homeworks, and then use Community Taught to track your progress through the course. So the idea is that you're learning, but you're not learning alone. You're learning with other people. You're getting that sense of community. You're working on questions and problems together, just like we're doing right now here on stream, right? I'm not just sitting quietly and, reading this course material. We're talking about it. We're doing exercises together. We're answering questions together. Community is a huge part of learning, something that often gets overlooked. And so those two things together make for a successful learning experience. Celie says, when an interviewer is talking fast, I cannot understand what they're talking about. That's why I can't find a job. Yeah, you can always communicate with your interviewer too and ask them to slow down. You can say, hey, I'm really eager to demonstrate my skills for you. I just want to make sure that I'm clearly understanding what you're asking of me. I want to make sure that I clearly understand the question I'm being asked so that I can give you the best answer. So if you could you please slow down just a little bit, and please don't be offended if I ask you to repeat a question. I'm just making sure that I understood it correctly. So that's a way you could approach that problem, is just to say, hey, I want to give you the best answer. So I'm going to ask you if you could please slow your speech down a little bit so that I can make sure I'm fully understanding what you're asking me. Yeah. Communication is key, right, folks? All right, let's keep going. We were just talking about how if you know a file is small, you can actually read information, you can have the contents of the file print out directly. And so that's what we're seeing here. We're opening this shorter file. We are reading it. And then we can actually do like a slice against it and see what it prints out. So in this case, it's going to print out, starting from the start of the file and printing out the first 20 characters. So we're reading reading all the characters into this variable called input, but we're using string slicing to print out the first 20 characters of the string data. Now, when the file is read in this manner, using this .read method, all the characters, including all the lines and the new line characters, are a huge string stored in a single variable. So it's just one variable holding all the contents of the file. And it's a good idea to store the output of read as a variable because each call to read exhausts the resource. Okay? So what does that mean? What does it mean when we say exhausts the resource? Well, they give an example here. We're opening this file. We are printing it by doing a read, right? So we're saying, all right, read the file, find the length, and print it. And now that we've done that, the file has been read. We have gotten to the end of the file. There is nothing left to read. And so if we try to print it again directly by calling read against it again, the length is now going to print as 0. So what we should have done is read it once. It's essentially going to track through the whole file, read the contents, and then save that output to a variable. Because if we try to call read again, as I say, the resource has been exhausted. The file has already been read. There's nothing else to read, so it's not going to bring back anything. So I think that's important to remember. Dan says, gone are the glorious days of spending 3 years in a secluded concrete bunker and emerging with superhuman programming knowledge. Yeah, that would not work for me. Physically, I cannot learn. I cannot learn alone in silence. I have to have some kind of a deadline or an audience or something to keep me motivated. Hey, Rehan, good to have you here. Welcome to the stream. Do a face reveal. This is my face. I don't know what else you want. Thank you for the follow, Catrate. Oh, is your name Catrate? Is your name based on Catra from She-Ra? Just curious if you're still around. I would love that if that was true. I love She-Ra. Also, thank you for the follow, Jinzuni. Techno says, is 100 devs free? Yep, 100%. The everything is free. The Discord is free. The courses are free. All the resources within the course are free. Nothing is paid. Everything is 110% free. Yeah. And you really don't have to do the full sign up, Techno. You can go straight to the Discord if you want. Again, everything is free. So you don't have to worry about completing all the sign up tasks or whatever. You can just go straight to the Discord and it's not going to hurt you at all. There's no penalty for that. Yeah. Mitchie says, welcome to the stream, by the way, Mitchie. They say, I think it can only be read once because it is a generator. Okay. I don't know what a generator is yet, but I'm sure we'll learn that. So very cool. I'll try to remember that. All right, remember you should only actually use the open function if the file data will fit comfortably in memory. If a file is too large, you should write your program to read the file in chunks using a for or while loop. So yeah, opening the entire file may not be the best, especially once you start working with, real data, which can be very, very large. So you might not always want to do that. So just you have to consider the size of the data sometimes prior to scripting your approach. All right, so you just joined the channel and did the introduction. Awesome. Good to have you here, Jen. You can feel free to check out some of the channels on the Discord that you might find useful are I would suggest first off, go to the rules channel and the read first channel and make sure that you clicked read the rules and click the emoji, because that's going to give you access to all of the Discord channels. So make sure that you do rules, read first, click the emoji at the bottom, actually read the rules, click the emoji, open up all the channels, and then after that, I would suggest checking out the catch-up crew. The catch-up crew is folks that are starting the course right now, just like you. And so once you join the catch-up crew, you'll have a bunch of people to learn alongside with who are at all different stages. And you can find study buddies and accountability partners and all those wonderful things. And I'm there as well. I'm one of the mods on the Discord. Awesome. Great, Jinzuni. Great start. Dan says small data isn't real data. How dare? Yeah, I tend to agree with you there, Dan. Big data is real data. All right, so now how do we actually search through a file for specific information? All right, when we are searching through data in a file, it's very common to read through a file and only process the lines that meet a particular condition. And we can combine the pattern for reading a file with string methods to build simple search mechanisms. So we can still use things like loops, but we just have conditions on those loops to only return values that meet our criteria. So if we only wanted to find, let's say, the people who have sent us emails, right? This file that we're reading is a whole bunch of just junk from an email inbox. It's got all the categories or criteria for the emails that this person has received over the past, X number of months. If we only want to learn, okay, give me a full list of everybody who sent me an email in the last several months, we can say, all right, let's open the file. And as we read through the file, only print the lines that start with the characters of from. So let's go ahead and do that really quickly. So we're going to open the short version because, we want to be careful about not reading files that are too large. So we can use the short version here. We can say for line in fhand, if line starts with from, then print that line. So you can see when I do that, what we get back is a list of all the from email addresses in the file. You can see there's some repeats, but that's okay. We're only stripping out the data that we want, and that's what we return. Oh, Machiko, yeah. Thank you for asking. They say, what's the schedule for this stream? Would love to join every time. Yeah, so I generally stream on Sundays starting at 3 p.m. Eastern. So whatever that is in your time zone, Sundays at 3 p.m. Eastern. Now, we're heading into some holidays. I live in the U.S., and so American Thanksgiving is at the end of November. So I may or may not be streaming on that weekend. Oh, you're EST. Perfect. Yeah, so 3 p.m. Eastern, pretty familiar with that time zone. But yeah, so do keep in mind American Thanksgiving is coming up, as well as Christmas, obviously. So gonna have some potential, off days here soon, but for the most part, Sundays at 3 p.m. Eastern. All right, so we've got our output from the program, and we've got our, it's printing out these lines, but you'll notice it has a new line in between each of our printouts. So, here we've got a line with text, and then you've got a line like this that is blank. Line with text, blank, etc. Why does that happen? Well, because of the new line character. Each of these lines ends with a new line, so our print statement prints the string in the variable line, which includes a new line, and then the print statement itself adds another new line. So we have this sort of double space effect. If we wanted to get rid of that, we could use the strip method, in this case rstrip, to essentially get rid of the white space from the right side of the string. So for line, we could say, all right, strip the existing new line character, and then the print character will simply add one new line, and so you'd have a single space list instead of a double space list. Dooku says everyone is east, west, north, or south of something. Yeah, that's correct. Yep. Hey, thank you so much for the follow. Visus as well. Good to have you here. And so the difference in the output looks like this, just a single space list. So as our file processing gets more complicated, we may want to structure our search loops using continue. So as you remember, last week we covered the continue keyword. And what that does is essentially if a certain criteria is met, we can force our script to return to the top of the loop. So if we're in a loop, like a for loop or a while loop, the continue keyword doesn't stop the loop entirely, but it does force us to go back to the beginning of the next loop. So it's like, all right, stop where we're at. Don't break out of the loop. Just stop where we're at and go to the top of the next loop. So we'll see an example of that here. We're looking for interesting lines and skipping uninteresting lines. If we find an interesting line, we want to do something with that line. So here's an example of using continue within a for loop to analyze this text. So once again, we're opening this text file, we're looping through it, we're stripping off the extra new line characters, and then if a line does not start with the from keyword, it's going to enter this if statement. We hit the continue keyword, and what that's going to do is stop processing this loop and go back to the top for the next loop. So it's going to say, okay, well, this line doesn't contain from, so I'm just going to go to the next line. Now, quick quiz here, pop quiz. What keyword would I use if I wanted to stop the loop entirely? So if I didn't want to go to the top of the next loop, I just wanted to stop the loop entirely right here. What keyword would I use instead of continue? What's kind of the companion keyword? Yeah, I would use break instead, right? You know, if a certain condition is met, I use break, and what that does is it stops the loop entirely. Yeah, we break out of the loop. Versus continue, which just means go to the next loop. Hey, Skeet Sense, welcome to the stream. Good to have you here. And you're exactly right, too. So coming in hot with the right answer. I love that. So many of my new chatters are like, you know, they know the answer. They're just biding their time. They're like, dude, dropping it in. It's great. Yeah, we use break. So just remember the difference between these two. Continue doesn't stop the loop. It just goes to the next iteration. Whereas break does what it says. It breaks the loop, breaks us out of the loop, and goes on to the next thing. Yeah. Okay. And we can also use the find string method to simulate a search that finds lines where the search string is anywhere in the line. Now, we've used find before, right? We used it in our last exercise that we did at the start of the stream. Find looks for an occurrence of a string within another string and either returns the position of the string or -1 if the string was not found. Now, why does it return -1 if the string isn't found? Yeah, you could do it, Dan. Absolutely. Why does it return -1 if it can't if it can't find anything? What does -1 signify for us here? It signifies not found. Yeah. Why? Why -1? Why not, I don't know, 1,000? Why not 0? Why not 100? Why -1? Exactly. Yeah. As Sully says, -1 can't be an index. Right. Yeah. 0 is the first index. -1 is essentially, yeah, never, yeah. Why not -1,000? Right. Yeah. -1 is not is not a valid index. Now, you can use -1. You can use -1, for example, if you are working from the right side of an array or the right side of a list. And -1 will kind of work backwards from right to left. But if you get a result of -1, it essentially means not found because it's not a valid position. Yeah. So that was my random little quiz question. I sometimes like to spring that on you to make sure to see if folks are paying attention or not. Okay, so in this case, this next example here, what we're doing here is we're using find to find a specific email domain, right? So we want to find all the ones that are from the University of Cape Town. So we can say, all right, look through every line in this file and only return the email addresses that are from this specific, domain, right? From University of Cape Town. And how they're doing that is saying, all right, let's loop through the line, get rid of the new line characters. If the domain is not matching this, so if line.find is -1, meaning that it didn't return a valid result, then continue. Otherwise, print the line. So essentially what this is going to do is it's going to only print lines that match this domain because it's going to skip the ones that don't return a valid result. Yeah, exactly. So skip lines because we're using the continue keyword here to skip the print. So if there's no match, we continue and go to the top of the next loop. We don't ever hit this print statement. However, if line.find does return a result, it's not going to be -1. And so we skip the continue and we go to the print. We print that matching line. So yeah, the way this is written is a little tricky, right? Because it's essentially doing a negative. It's saying, all right, if this is true, then continue. But what the continue means is that we skip the print and we go to the next loop. Yeah. So a little tricky, I know. But we can see that when this is run, it only returns values that match the University of Cape Town or that domain that we specified. Okay? Now, I do want to pause here for a second. Let me know if this isn't clear. So it's okay. It's okay to say, I don't understand. That's a valid answer. And there's no such thing as a silly question. There's no such thing as a stupid question. As long as the question is asked in good faith, then it's a valid question, and it's likely that other people have the same question. So as we get into stuff that's more tricky, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, or if you're not sure what something is doing, feel free to ask and we'll review it a little bit more. We'll go over something again. I'll try to explain it a different way, okay? So I just want to put that out there, is that it's okay to, it's okay to ask questions. I says, so each time the for loop loops, line equals the current line read in from the file. That's correct. Yeah. So, and remember that Python is determining what a line is by looking for that invisible new line character. So the /n. That essentially is what Python is looking for. It's like, okay, I'm treating each line as an entity that ends with the new line character. And it's treating that as one iteration of the loop. And so for each one of those lines, it's looking in there for the data that we want to return, seeing whether there's a match. And if there is a match, it's going to print it. If there isn't, it's going to go to the top of the next loop. Hey, High Priest, good to see you. Dan says, I was surprised it didn't need to put the continue indented on the next line. I know, I saw that too. My guess is that it's likely a shorthand type of a thing, in that since our if statement here essentially only has one line in the body, right? It's not a multi-line if statement, that we don't necessarily need to do the, new line indent thing, since it's a single, it's essentially like a one-liner, right? It's a single line body on the if statement, and so we don't necessarily need to have a new line indent situation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Celie says instead of a number of index, it could be on another function that returns a Boolean. Yeah, potentially. Mm-hmm. Silly says for readability, it would probably still be better to do the intent. Yeah, I mean, like if I was writing this myself, I would probably do the indent just for consistency, to remember what we're doing, to, not try to confuse things with too many variations, especially as we're still learning here. But I would imagine that he did it this way. He wrote the exercise this way just to expose us to different ways of doing things. But when I'm writing if statements, for now anyway, I'm probably still going to do the classic, indent format type thing. Yeah. All right. So there's our outlet. There's our output. Oh yeah. And he says right down here, here, we also use the contracted, or the contracted means shortened. The contracted form of the if statement, where we put the continue on the same line as the if. This contracted form of the if functions the same as if the continue were on the next line and indented. So that's good to know, that we can do, we can do Code War, we can do LeetCode one-liners here. We can be elite coders and do a Code Wars one-liner or a LeetCode one-liner with Python too. Web development, that's exactly the same course that we're following here, except we didn't have to pay for it. So I'm sure, unfortunately, that's too bad that Coursera has the same course, but they charge for it, because that's literally the course we're doing right now, except it's free. And it's on Dr. Chuck's website. So I hope you didn't pay too much for it, because that's literally what we're doing right now. That kind of sucks that they have it on Coursera, but it's behind a paywall. Because, yeah, we're doing Python for everybody right now. So, yeah, be careful with that, folks. A lot of the times, sites like, Udemy or Coursera are going to have the exact same information that, that is often available for free in, Odin Project or Free Code Camp, or, all of YouTube, whatever, Twitch. Yeah. Yeah, Coursera might just charge for grading certification, maybe. But again, you don't really need a cert either, especially not for something like this. A Coursera cert is not going to get you, it's not going to do anything for you. The only reason to get a certificate is if your employer requires it. That would be, my opinion. Anyway, okay, so what happens if we want to let the user pick a specific file? We want the user to be able to, so instead of writing the file directly into our code, we want to take the user input and open a file that they specify. Again, we really don't want to have to edit our Python code every time we want to process a different file, because again, one of the, we talked about before, one of the tenets of programming, one of the reasons we write scripts in the first place is that they're reusable. It's something we can use over and over and over again and just pass in different arguments. Let's make it reusable. Let's make it multifunctional. Just have it, do the same task every single time, but we can pass in different arguments. So what if we wanted to have the user enter a file name? So if we want to ask for user input, we can call input here, call the input function. And then we can simply open whatever file they pass in. And then we can loop through that file and do some stuff with it. So let's try that. So let's ask for, I'm going to put this one in a script here. So create a new file. I'm going to call it userfile.py. Let's see. Do I want to? Yeah, how do I want to do this? Okay, well, let's do this. Oops. You need my internet points. Yeah. Yeah, it's internet points are nice, but it's all, what are they going to can you exchange them for goods and services? That's the thing. A lot of people get caught up into that as they get into the gamification of sites like LeetCode and Code Wars. And what are you actually going to do with those points once you have a bunch of them? That's the question you got to ask yourself. Yeah, I'm going to do it in the script. I'm just going to do it like this. All right. So we take in an input, enter the file name, we open it, and then we're just going to do a count of the number of rows in the file. So Dooku says, does it auto-complete the file name like when using tab in the CLI? Well, let's find out. We're about to find out. So I'm going to run this. I'm going to quit the interpreter. And we'll just run the file, user file.py. All right, so it's asking me for the file name, and I'm going to have it run on, I don't really care which one. I'll do a shorter one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this pay.py has 12 lines. Why did I count the lines? It's literally right there. Anyway, so we'll put in pay.py. Oh, and it's looking specifically for subject lines, so that's not going to work. Let me do this. I'm going to just put the word subject in here. Subject. Nothing. All right. Do that again. All right. And pay.py. Yeah. So when I run it again, now that I have the word subject in the file, I thought it was counting the lines. I didn't read the actual script. It's just saying if the line starts with the word subject, then increment the count. So in this case, there's 1 subject lines in pay.py. So that was able to allow us to not only input a specific file name, but also start with a specific keyword and count the occurrences of that keyword. Yeah. Now, so in this case, since we're working in the terminal here, it's not doing any kind of autocomplete. Now, I'm sure that you could do some kind of a, you could set up some kind of a wildcard search where you could have it, search for partial matches, on the file name and then return a list of the potential matches and then have the user select one of those. That could be a way you could do that. But I don't think you're going to get like built-in autocomplete. Now, as web developer suggested, if you're working in the actual, like in a script here in VS Code, oftentimes there are things like IntelliSense that's going to autocomplete file names for you. But in raw Python, I'm not sure that that's an option. Now, we might learn differently as we go along, but I think that's one of the things we're going to actually cover next is what happens if the user tries to enter a file that doesn't exist. What do we do? And that's exactly the next thing we're going to talk about. So we read the file name from the user, we open the file, we can run it, we can rerun our script on various other files, and it's going to, do the same action every single time, depending on what file we put in. So in, if we search our mbox.txt versus mboxshort.txt, it's going to return a different result, but it's going to do the same search on both files. Now, take a look at the above program and ask yourself, what could possibly go wrong here? What might our friendly user do that would cause our nice little program to ungracefully exit with a traceback, making us look not so cool in the eyes of our users? So yeah, that's the question. All right, chat, you tell me. What could users do to break our program? If we left it coded just exactly as is, just like this. Yeah, they could write the incorrect file name. They could not input a file name, sure. Yeah, welcome, O1, by the way. Good to have you here. They could put it, yeah, exactly. They could put in an invalid character. And there's a lot of, characters in other languages outside of English that look very similar to English characters. So what if they try to put in like a Cyrillic character or something like that? Something that physically looks like an English character, but isn't. So yeah, absolutely. Those are all different ways that users could break our program. And if you think, oh, well, that's not going to happen, if a user uses my program, they're going to know what file they want to read. Yeah, no, they're not. Yeah, exactly. People are one thing I've learned about users is anytime you allow free text entry, if you allow the users to type whatever they want, they're going to type the wrong thing. Right? They're just gonna. All right, so this is your last chance. What if our user types something that is not a file name? Obviously, it's going to get an error. It's going to say no such file or directory, etc., etc. And it says, do not laugh. Users will eventually do every possible thing they can do to break your programs, either mistakenly or potentially with malicious intent. An important part of any software development team is a person or a group called quality assurance, or QA, whose very job it is to do the craziest things possible in an attempt to break the software that the programmer has created. Yeah. QA finds flaws in programs before we deliver the programs to the end users. And the QA team is the programmer's best friend. Yes. So if you really enjoy, if you really enjoy troubleshooting and breaking programs and things like that, then hey, you could become a QA engineer. They're super important, and they are the first protection between either customer ignorance or people with malicious intent who want to get data that they shouldn't have. So very important. Now, in order to try to protect ourselves a little bit, we can use a try catch block or a try except block. We need to assume that our open call might fail and add recovery code when the open fails. So how do we do that? Well, we can wrap that open call inside of the try block and then have the accept block simply say, all right, print file cannot be opened, and then we immediately exit and stop the program in its tracks. We don't do anything else. So we say file cannot be opened, show the customer the name that they tried to type in. They should be able to see why it's wrong, hopefully, and then we immediately exit. So once we've done that, after we pass this exception block, that means that the file name is valid and we can safely run the rest of our code. Yeah, and Coding with Strangers brings up a good point. They say that company that shut down the country a few months ago really needed QA. CrowdStrike, I think. Yeah. And, QA is one of those sort of layers in the software development process that is often overlooked because technically it doesn't generate anything, right? QA doesn't really generate code. It takes time to do proper QA. And time is money, right? And so a lot of the times the first cut that businesses make is to QA. They're just like, okay, we need to generate code faster. We need to generate more code faster. And we need to make more money by writing more code faster, pushing out releases more quickly, that type of thing. And so they cut QA time and they cut QA personnel in order to do that because it makes more money faster. But then quality starts to slip because developers overlook things or customers do things that aren't intended, and there's no protections in the code to prevent customers from being users, entering things they shouldn't, or prevent malicious actors from getting data they shouldn't have. And so then it ends up costing the company far more than it would have to just have a proper QA team and time to do good QA. Exactly. It's an overhead generator, as Silly said. QA generates overhead, and so companies don't see that as a positive on their balance sheets without considering the amount of money it saves in the long term, because you don't have a huge data breach and have to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in fines or get sued 6 dozen times, Or maybe you bring down all the major businesses on the planet for a few hours, something like that, like CrowdStrike did. Coding says, can you explain the structure of the try, catch, if else? This took me a long time to learn why it's important to do. Yeah, so the try, in this case, the try except block or a try catch block, what it does is it is essentially doing kind of what it says on the tin. We're trying to do something. Can we do this thing? And if we can do this thing, then we can go straight to the rest of our script down here. However, if we can't, if this fails for any reason, it's going to cause an exception. It's going to cause an error. And so what we've done here is essentially built a safety net so that if there is some kind of an error, if there is an exception, we go into this except block, which performs a specific action. So we're essentially just telling our script what should happen if things don't go as planned. Our except block is kind of a backup plan. Like, okay, it's our safety net. If this fails, what do we do? What's our next step? So any failure is going to cause this exception block to execute, which is going to print file cannot be opened, and then immediately quit the program. However, if this action is successful, if we were able to try and succeed, we skip the except block entirely and we head into the rest of our script. Now, in Python, if this is your first time seeing Python today, you might wonder, okay, but where does the except block end? Well, in Python, white space is important. White space matters. So we can see the body of each of these actions by looking at the indents. So the colon here starts our try block, and each line that is indented away from the left margin is part of the body of the try block. And it's the same for the exception block as well. So the colon starts the block, and the body is noted by these two indents right here. So first line of the body, second line of the body. We exit the body here after the exit command, and we can see that the next line is not indented. So now we're out of the body and we're back in the regular script. Now here we go into another block. We go into a for loop. So the colon starts the block, the body is indented, and now we're going into a nested if statement. So yet another body starts here, and so we simply indent it twice. So here is the body of this if statement, which is the body of this for loop. So you can see how, since we have to consider white space, that if you get too far indented, if you nest your if statements too far or your loops too far, things are gonna get real messy real fast in terms of how it looks. So we need to be very careful about how far we're nesting things, and maybe be a little bit more clever about how we structure our scripts so that we are, not getting too deep in the weeds in terms of nested loops and things. Because if white space matters, you could start getting, halfway across the page in terms of indents. Stranger says, for example, I tell my if statements what they can't do now versus back in the day. I used to tell it what I wanted, and it would lead to a lot of else ifs. Yeah. And that's a way that you can be more clever about how you're writing your statements, right? If you have to consider too many conditions, if you have a case where something could be equal to a bunch of different conditions, but there's only one thing that you want to avoid, then you might say, instead of saying, all right, if it's equal to this and this and this and this and this and this, etc., why not just say, if it's not equal to this one thing, do this, right? So it's just, you sometimes have to reframe your train of thought if things are getting too complicated. Yep. Dan says, we dug too deep. Yeah, it's like that line from Lord of the Rings. They dug too greedily and too deep. You don't want to dig too deep with your nested statements. And if you want to learn more about how to think about this kind of thing, or how for loops and if statements work, I would suggest checking out the earlier lessons. So my streams on the first things like loops and iterations. So check out lesson 6 for more information on how to structure your loops, what the white space does, how to nest loops, how to be clever about building loops properly. Check out lesson 6. And then also, things like lesson 4 for conditional execution as well. So check those out if you want some more information. I have done streams on those. So this one would be in last week's stream, which is recorded, and the other one would be, I think, from 3 weeks ago. So check those out. Okay. The exit function terminates the program. It's a function that we call that never returns. So when our user or QA team types in silliness, we catch them and we recover gracefully. So we can see here that, if we type in an invalid file name like this, it's just going to go straight into our accept block and quit the script after it prints the warning message to our user. Dooku says, can you have many exceptions or only one? Many exceptions or only one. So I'm not quite sure I fully understand the question, but you could, in your accept block, you could have additional logic that prints out a specific statement depending on what caused the exception. So, you could say, depending on what the specific type of error was, you could tailor your statement to fit that. Yeah. Thank you for the follow, Mordop and DJ. Thank you so much, folks. Glad to have you here. So protecting the open call is a good example of proper use of try and except in a Python program. We use the term Pythonic when we're doing something the Python way. Oh boy. We might say that the above example is the Pythonic way to open a file. Once you are more skilled in Python, you can engage in repartee with other Python programmers to decide which of two equivalent solutions to a problem is more Pythonic. Oh boy. The notion is that programming is part engineering and part art. We are not always interested in just making something work. We also want our solution to be elegant and also to be appreciated as elegant by our peers. I love this acknowledgement of code snobbery. It's great. Because it's going to happen, right? People are going to be like, no, my solution is the best and mine's the best. And, you're going to get into arguments with nerds on Twitter about, code syntax and stuff. It's going to happen. So might as well call it Pythonic. Repartee. That's a great word. Yeah, get your monocle out and argue semantics. Hey, I'm a lifelong sci-fi fan, so I am very familiar with nerd arguments about petty nonsense. Yeah, I can debate useless Star Trek facts with the best of them. So many, petty nerd arguments about random nonsense. So yeah, it carries over into pretty much any field you get into as you get more specialized in that field. Yeah, you're gonna have some lively debates on things, which is fine, right? Maybe you learn something. All right, so we've talked about reading files. Oh, and Vijay, thank you so much for the follow as well. We've talked about reading files. Now, how do we write a file? So to write a file, you have to open it with mode W as a second parameter. So again, we're calling the same function here. We're calling open still, but now we're passing in a second argument into our function. And the value of that argument is W. So open actually has multiple parameters, and you can pass in multiple arguments into the function. Now, the reason we don't have to use all of those all the time is because they're optional, right? Only the first one is mandatory. So this first argument is mandatory. The rest are optional. So if we want to write, that's a second little add-on we need to add there. And be careful, because if the file already exists, opening it in write mode clears out the old data and starts fresh. So be very aware when you're calling a file in write mode. If it already exists, you're gonna essentially truncate it. If the file doesn't exist, a new one is created. So before you do this, be very aware of what current files you already have. You don't want to overwrite what's already there unless you specifically mean to. I'm harping on this a little bit because we had something happen recently at work where someone essentially truncated some database tables in our database. They didn't mean to, but it was tables that already existed, and they accidentally truncated them in production. So my fellow SQL programmers will know exactly what that means and have a mini heart attack. And this happened to us in production just last week. And it was a fun adventure in reinstating database backups because it was live data and it was important data and it got truncated. And it happens, right? It's something that can happen. And you just need to be very aware when you're messing with potentially destructive operations in any language, in SQL or Python, any language at all, anytime when you could potentially be altering or destroying data, you got to be darn sure that your script is 100% correct before you run it. Icefire says, sounds like cut off some data. Yes, that's what truncate means in SQL terms. The truncate keyword essentially doesn't delete a table. It just deletes the contents of the table. So the table structure is still there, but the contents are gone. And gone. Like, not like you can't like do a control Z in SQL. That doesn't exist. Once you do it, you've done it. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like running a SQL query without where. Exactly. Yeah. Well, the thing about truncate statements is, yeah, exactly. It's like that. It's you are deleting all the data from that table. And it's going to delete all the data. That's just what a truncate statement does. Yeah. So don't do that, folks. Surfire says, want to have a full-on heart attack? Do that on a Friday at 5 p.m. and push to prod. Yeah, well, this person did it on a Thursday at like 4 p.m., which is, close enough. So truncate first, ask for forgiveness. Oh no, please don't. Oh boy. Axiom, thank you so much for the follow. Good to have you here. Yeah. Yeah, it took us until Saturday to get the data back. Yeah, from those tables they got truncated. So be very careful. Anyway, so if you are writing to a file, assuming that you are, writing to a file with data you can afford to lose, or you're creating a new file, the write method puts data into the file, returning the number of characters written, and the default write mode is text for writing and reading strings. So in this case, we have declared a variable with a string in it, and then we've, set our file to write mode, and so we can write to it, passing in that variable. And it's just appending that data to the end of the file as we go. So that's what write is doing for us here. And we're managing the line ends by putting in the new line character. So again, Python is going to read by line. So if you want to end a line, you have to put in that new line character. And then when you're done writing, you have to make sure you close the file so that the last bit of data is physically written to the disk, so it will not be lost if the power goes off. So kind of committing it. So if you're thinking, I tend to think of things in terms of SQL because that's my so-called native language. So it's kind of like doing a commit in SQL, right? You're saying, all right, we're done, write this to memory. Dookie says, is there append mode, or if you want to append/edit, you need to read first, append, and then write it back? Folks are saying there is explicitly an append mode, and I believe that's what's happening here in terms of, let's see, yeah, so if you keep calling write again and again and again, so we can write one line, and then if we call write again, it's going to append the new data to the end, if that's what you're asking about. I don't speak English, I speak database. I mean, yeah, that's kind of how I feel sometimes. So some tips on debugging. When you're reading and writing files, you might run into problems with white space. Tell me about it. This is very true. These errors can be hard to debug because spaces, tabs, and new lines are invisible. Man, this is my life. This Dr. Chuck is preaching to the choir here. I hate new lines and spaces and tabs with a burning passion of 1,000 suns as a database engineer. They can be absolute hell sometimes. Oh, hey, Moody Lounge. Good to have you here. Glad you're a big fan. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Um, but there's a built-in function, REPR, that can help. It takes any object as an argument and returns a string representation of the object. For strings, it represents white space characters with backslash sequences. Interesting. Okay. So it's going to essentially make those special characters visible. So in this case, we have a string here that has like spaces, but then also a hidden tab and a line return as well, and it's going to make those visible for us. Also, many text editors can do that as well. So like VS Code can do it. Something like Notepad++, it can make those hidden special characters like, paragraph symbols, spaces, carriage returns, that type of thing. It can make those visible for you so you can see where they are. Yeah, Silly says a space character in another encoding is really a terrible thing. Yeah, that's something that I have to deal with sometimes at work, because our essentially our ETL tool is built on Unicode UTF-8. So UTF-8 Unicode encoding, but occasionally we get input systems that are trying to pass data to us from a different code page, like UTF-16. And so it's going to have some characters that we can't handle, including invisible characters that we sometimes can't handle, or invisible characters that overflow the bounds of the field they're trying to write to in our database. So the text itself maybe looks like it's 50 characters, but it has 3 hidden characters in there that aren't visible to us, but they're in the text, and we can't see them, but they take up space, and so it's going to overflow the boundaries of the column, and it's going to cause an error. So yeah, those types of things are very real, and so you need a way to make those invisible characters visible so you can deal with them. Gordon Kingston says, "Awesome, see, you get me." Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Welcome to the stream, Gordington. Welcome to the stream, Too Shy. And also, sometimes different systems use different characters to indicate the end of a line. Some systems use new line, like /n. Others use a return character, something like /r. Some use both. If you move files between different systems, these inconsistencies might cause problems. Yeah, you get into, Unix-based versus Linux-based systems. You're going to have just fundamental differences in how they, handle line returns, carriage returns, that type of thing. Yep. You can read more on Wikipedia if you want, or you can wait until you encounter it in the wild, get frustrated, and do your research. So, quick glossary here. We're gonna do the exercise. We're gonna do the quiz and the exercise. Let's see, what time is it? Yeah, we've got time to do those. So we're gonna take a break first, but when we come back, we're gonna do the lesson quiz. Do the lesson quiz, and we're going to do the auto-graded exercise here, practicing our ability to read some files, and we're going to test our knowledge of what we just went through. Welcome to the stream, Guilty. They say, I'm starting to learn coding, but I'm worried about AIs. Isn't it useless to learn to code when you can ask AI to build hundreds of lines for you without errors? Does this job make sense? Can I have your opinion? I'm a newbie and I'm learning C++. Yeah, so I think, the main issue with AI is kind of what you said there. You can ask AI to build hundreds of lines for you without errors. So developers in chat, how many of you have tried to use AI, and what was the quality of the code that you got back from AI, ChatGPT, Copilot, whatever? I'm gonna do a quick informal poll here, chat. Developers in chat, what do you think about the code that AI spits out for you? Yeah. So take a look at the feedback that we're getting here already. So as you know, if you're looking at coding from the outside as you're learning it, you might say, oh my gosh, it's so advanced. It can generate perfect code for me. Why do I need to learn this stuff? But as folks are saying, in order to get good code out of AI, you have to already know exactly what you want and understand the result. So AI, ChatGPT, no matter what model you use, it doesn't really matter what model you use. AI is only as good as what you give it. It's only as good as your prompts. It's only as good as your ability to refine those prompts based on what you get back. Folks are saying, even in high quality prompts, they don't do a good job. And I would very much agree with that. I never use AI to write my code for me. Now, I do use AI a lot. I use AI all the time. I use it for work. I use it for personal projects. But what I use it for is very specific. I use it as a tool, as a supplement, not as a replacement for what I do. I mostly use it to, let's say I've written a SQL statement. I've already written the statement, but I try to run it and I get an error. Now, SQL is really terrible at telling you where the errors are. So I dump it into ChatGPT and I say, find the error in this statement. I already know there's an error. I just need to tell me where it is. And GPT is great at that. Now, when I've asked it in the past, just from for fun, just to be like, okay, can you build me a website that can do X, Y, and Z? It'll build me something that looks correct on the surface, but when you actually try to run it, there's going to be a bunch of problems. There's going to be a bunch of inconsistencies. There's going to be a bunch of outdated methodologies that aren't the way we do things anymore. And I have to do a lot of digging through the code, combing through the code, running it, handling errors, doing, backup prompts to say, like, okay, this is wrong, fix this. This is wrong, fix this. Do it this way, use this library, et cetera, et cetera. And so by then it would have been less work for me to just write the code myself. And so the only reason I use AI for coding is just if I already know exactly what it should generate for me and I'm just too lazy to type it out, or it's like a repetitive task, like I need it to generate a bunch of insert statements for me in SQL. And so AI will never be a replacement for a skilled developer, but it is a useful tool to have. It's kind of like a hammer. Is a hammer super useful? Yeah, it's a lot faster than trying to, hammer a nail in with a rock or your hand. But you still have to be the one swinging the hammer because the hammer is not smart enough to work on its own. It doesn't know what to do on its own. You have to be the one guiding the hammer to the nail. Yeah. Kaizen, welcome to the stream. They say, is this your site? No, this is written by a wonderful professor at the University of Michigan, Dr. Chuck. He's written several free courses for learning various programming languages, and we are doing the Python course. But yeah, it's all free. Yeah, I highly recommend. Yeah, but folks are saying, yeah, partially great at reference, but not a good architect. Yeah, AI does not understand why you're asking it. It has no comprehension. It doesn't understand why you're asking it these questions. It doesn't know the big picture. It hasn't talked to your customers. You are the one that manages the big picture. You are the owner. You are the guide. You are just wielding AI as a tool to help you get to the end result. Your brain is still better, 100%. You should absolutely still learn how to code. You can still build great things, and you can use AI to, help figure out where you forgot a semicolon, right? Dumpster juice, yeah. Right. And as Dan said, like I was talking about, AI doesn't understand the big picture. It can generate code snippets for you, like repetitive stuff that, is annoying to type out. It can generate, a foundation for you to get started, and then you have to guide it to the end result. Yep. It's good at repeating tasks that have been done before. And that's the best use case for AI. Stuff that, you could look it up on Stack Overflow, but you can get it from, ChatGPT and then incorporate that into the project that you as a developer are building. Yeah, do stuff like turn this HTML table into a CSV. And yeah, like I use it to generate insert statements. I'll be like, If I have a big Excel file and I need to insert all that data into a SQL table, rather than generating a bunch of, insert statements myself, I'll just be like, hey, GPT, take this Excel file and turn it into 100 insert statements. And it can do that in 2 seconds flat. Yeah, AI is Batman's utility belt, but we are still Batman, 100%. Dan says, I think more jobs have been lost to WordPress than to AI. Yeah, I would probably agree with that. Yeah, and you can use it as almost like a coding partner. You could say like, hey, does this look appropriate? Have I done this the most efficient way? But then in the end, you are still the judge of that quality in the end. You can be like, yeah, no, that's garbage. I'm not using that. Right? Yeah, like Iron Man with Jarvis, exactly. Kaizen says it might be concerning when we get to AGI, meaning you know, uh, artificial general intelligence, meaning it can do everything. But people have been saying that AGI is on the way for decades. I have read science fiction stories written in the 1950s by Isaac Asimov about how the rise of computation would lead to all-consuming universe-ending artificial intelligence by 1960, right? And here we are 70 years later and it's not happened. So I don't think we don't, hypotheticals are certainly fun to think about. I love science fiction. I read sci-fi all the time. I love, stories about world-ending computers and, crazy robots and that kind of thing. Those are great, but I don't think in reality they're anywhere near coming to fruition. Yeah. Of course. No worries. That's a good question, Guilty. It gets asked a lot, which is why I wanted to spend a few minutes covering it because it's important to think about and it's important to remember why we still choose to learn to code and why, we shouldn't feel like the world is ending just because ChatGPT can spit out some boilerplate SQL for us. Yep. All right, folks, take a 5-minute break. When we come back, we're going to do the quiz and we're going to do the exercise. Okay? So it's important to reinforce what we've just learned. Just reading something, just reading text doesn't mean we've learned anything, right? Just reading something doesn't mean we've learned it. We need to apply what we've learned. And so the best way to do that is to quiz ourselves and see if we can agree on the answers to these questions, and then see if we can do some sort of freehand coding and try to remember what we just covered, 10, 15 minutes ago. Sometimes that's harder than we think, right? Okay, 5 minutes. Be right back. Stick around for the quiz. If you really want to learn this stuff, don't drop off the stream now. Stick around for the quiz. We'll do it together and we'll embed this information into our brains. Okay? All right, see you in 5 minutes. Alrighty, folks, we got about a minute left in the break, so come on back if you're coming back. Make sure that you're staying hydrated. Make sure that you are getting up and stretching if you're able to do that. If you've been sitting this whole time, make sure to stay active. And as always, please pet your dogs, pet your cats, pet your significant other with their permission, of course, and then come on back. Also, thank you for the follow, NSTLGY and Kaizen Lab. Good to have you both here today. Alrighty, we are back. Welcome back, everybody. Yeah, and yeah, as Guilty said, we were talking about before the break. We were talking about how do we use ChatGPT? What is it for? Is it going to replace us? And when you're learning, as Guilty said, they use it like a co-professor. They write basic code. They try to figure out themselves, and then they can use ChatGPT to help explain what's happening if they're struggling with understanding it. And I think that's a really valid way to use GPT. And as we kind of said before, GPT is really good, and AI models are good at what we call boilerplate code. So very simple snippets of code or very standard types of code that are very repeatable and get used often. And GPT and AI is really good at that kind of thing. So if you're learning, that's mostly what you're going to be encountering is really standard small snippets of code. And so that's a great use case for GPT. Just be careful you aren't relying on it too much, and that you actually understand that you aren't asking it for the answer, that you're asking it to just help you with your understanding. So in the end, it's still on you to understand what you're learning, but you can use GPT to clarify or re-explain something in a different way. Okay, so speaking of understanding, let's take a quiz, shall we? All right, we're gonna do the quiz first, and then we'll do the auto-grader. So given the architecture and terminology we introduced in Chapter 1, where are files stored? Are they stored in A, secondary memory, B, machine language, C, motherboard, or D, main memory? What do we think, chat? And if you just joined us for this quiz, just shout out your answer. It doesn't really matter, just as long as whatever you think is the right answer, go ahead and shout it out, and we'll talk through. In the end, we'll come to a consensus on what we think the best answer is. I haven't done this quiz before. We're just working through, based on our knowledge and what we just learned, what we think the best answer might be. So secondary memory, machine language, motherboard, or main memory. What do we think? A, B, C, D. Techno says, have you finished your doctorate? I do not have a doctorate, actually. Don't have no PhD or anything like that. I do have a college degree, but not a doctorate. Mr. Incredible, welcome to the stream. They say secondary memory, I think, and folks are saying A, so secondary memory, and yes, I would agree. Yep. Because looking at the architecture diagram at the start of the chapter, it's either going to be, secondary memory or main memory. And in this case, long-term storage is going to be secondary memory, because main memory is going to be, for processing, things that are coming in, kind of active processing. Kaizen says, well, you don't need to have a PhD to be smart. Yeah, and I think PhD is just for a really kind of a specific type of learning journey, and it just depends on what type of journey you want to be on. I would eventually love to get a doctorate personally, but in the end, it's about, cost versus return, right? And I don't think I'm in my money making era at the moment. I would like to make money rather than spend money, and so unfortunately, that's the choice you have to make sometimes, right? But eventually, I'll get one if my employer pays for it. That's the key. Okay. Anyway, What is stored in a file handle that is returned from a successful open call? So when we call open against a file, what is stored in the file handle? Is it A, the handle is a connection to the file's data? B, the handle has a list of all the files in a particular folder on the hard drive? C, the handle contains the first 10 lines of the file? Or D, all the data from the file is read into memory and stored in the handle? What do we think, chat? What do we think? What is the file handle? What's in the file handle? Yeah, folks are saying A. And also, too, it's okay if you don't agree with the group either. If you have a different, opinion or a different answer that you think is the best answer, there's no harm in shouting it out either. So don't be afraid to put your opinion out there. But yeah, folks are saying A. And I think I would agree with that. As we kind of described it before, the file handle does not read the contents of the file, right? The file handle does not do this because who the heck knows how big that file is? It could be too big for your computer's memory. It could be a terabyte of text. You don't know. And it's doing is basically saying like, hey, and I need to sneeze, hang on. Excuse me. All it's basically saying is that, hey, Python can access this file. You have the permissions to do stuff with this file. Now, what do you want to do with it? Python is going to wait for you to dictate what you want to do with the contents of that file. Thank you, folks. That's the second time I've sneezed on this stream. I normally don't sneeze on stream. Live long and prosper. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. But yeah, so in the case of, since we aren't actually reading the contents of the file yet, I would say that this is probably the best answer. It's just a key. It's just a key to the file's data. Now, when we call open, we can pass in a file name as the first argument into that, as the first argument. But what if we added a second? What do we use the second parameter of the open call to indicate? What if we passed in something, we put in the name of the file, then we put a comma, then we put in something else? What does that indicate? A, what disk drive the file is stored on. B, how large we expect the file to be. C, whether we want to read data from the file or write data to the file. Or D, the list of folders to be searched to find the file we want to open. What do we think? What do we think, chat? Yeah, folks are saying C. Dan says if we want to walk or run. I suppose so. But yeah, it's basically saying, all right, you want to create a connection to this file's data. What type of connection is it going to be? Do we want to just read data? Or do we maybe want to write some data? So what direction is that connection going to be? Are we reading, just consuming the data? Or are we actually writing some data back to that? Oh my goodness, Monarch365, thank you so much for the sub. My alerts are kind of broken, but I'm going to give you my little test alert there. Thank you so much, Monarch. It's great to have you here, and I really appreciate the sub. Yeah, so I think that C is going to be the best answer here. Just it's telling us what type of operation we're going to do. So it's kind of determining what type of connection to the file data do we want to establish. Is it going to be just a read-only file connection, or is it going to involve some writing of data back to the file potentially? Question 4, what Python function would you use if you wanted to prompt the user for a file name to open? So let's pay attention to the wording of this question. Be very careful. What Python function would you use if you wanted to prompt the user for a file name to open? Is it going to be A, input, B, alert, C, file underscore input, or D, gets? Yeah, we got to pay attention to the wording here. It's a tricky one. Okay, we got folks saying maybe A or D, C. Got a few different potential answers here. What do we think? We got to make sure we get tiebreakers in here. Let's see. A. Okay, let's go through the options here. So what is this question actually asking? It's saying, all right, what Python function would you use if you wanted to prompt the user? So this is really the only part of the question we need to care about. They're just saying, what Python function would you use if you wanted to prompt the user for anything? It doesn't matter what that is. You're just asking the user a question. You're just basically saying, user, give me something. Give me something. It doesn't really matter what it is. And so in Python, well, let's go through the list of the options. Knowing that the question is essentially just this. You wanted to prompt the user. It's not going to be alert because that just shows an alert. I don't even know what this is. So it's either going to be A or C. And out of the two, in Python, which one is a valid prompt? Well, what we've been using to prompt users this entire time is, you can see it right up here, input. So it doesn't really matter what we're asking them for. Like in this example, we're asking them for a file name. But that doesn't matter. It's just a generic input, and they're going to give us a string, and then how we handle that string indicates what it actually is. Is it a number? Is it a file? What is it? And so in this case, it's just going to be input. That's the best answer here. Hey, Guacamole. Welcome to the stream. I love your username, by the way. It's great. Okay, so yeah, input's the best answer there, I think. Question 5. Hiya. Yes, and prompt means ask. So in English, you might have heard that. So you might have heard the word prompt used in terms of like prompt engineering, right? Prompt engineering with related to like AI or ChatGPT, and literally what that means is you're just figuring out how to ask the right question of ChatGPT. So prompt means question, and prompt engineering means like, you're crafting a good question to ask ChatGPT. So yep, prompt means question. All right, so what is the purpose of the new line character in text files? A, it indicates the end of one line and the beginning of another line of text. B, it allows us to open more than one file and read them in a synchronized manner. C, it adds a new network connection to retrieve files from the network. Or D, it enables random movement throughout the file. What do we think, chat? Yeah, D-Rocks, that's a good point. Like a lot of English words, prompt can mean more than one thing. Unfortunately, English is really hard. I think I've said this before on stream. English is ridiculously hard as a language because it's just a mishmash of all sorts of other languages smashed together. And so, yeah, I never feel bad towards anybody who has English as a second language if they ask for clarification, because English sucks, man. English is hard. Yes, folks are saying A, and yeah, I believe that's the best answer here. The new line character indicates the end of a line of text and the beginning of another line of text. Yep, it's the dividing symbol that Python uses to tell where a particular line ends. Yep. All right, question 6. If we open a file as follows, so we say xfile equals open mbox.txt, what statement could we use to read the file one line at a time? So we've opened the file and we're storing it in a variable called xfile. So would we use for line in xfile? That's answer A, for line in xfile. B, while line equals xfile.readline not equals null. C, while xfile. Or D, while line equals xfile.gets. What do we think is the best answer here in terms of Python? How can we read the file one line at a time? Yeah, and I think folks are saying A here as well. A lot of these answers have been A, which makes it really confusing for me to read chat. Yeah. KO, welcome to the stream. Yeah, and I believe that you're right there, KO. This is the correct answer in terms of Python. Now, some of these might be correct. Some of these might be correct in terms of like other languages, but we're strictly dealing with Python here, and so I believe this is the best answer. All right, question 7. What is the purpose of the following Python code? Yeah, we're opening a file and what are we doing with this code, chat? We're opening this file and we have a for loop here, and for each loop we are setting x, we're incrementing x by 1 and then printing x when the loop is over. What are we doing here, chat? Yeah, y'all are quick on the buzzer now. Y'all got the idea. Yep. We are counting the lines in mbox.txt. Exactly. Yep. Just doing a count of each of those lines. Okay, if you write a Python program to read a text file and you see extra blank lines in the output that are not present in the input file as shown below, what Python string function will likely solve the problem? Is it going to be A, starts with, B, trim, C, ljust, or D, rstrip? This one might be a little trickier. What do we think? Starts with, trim, ljust, or rstrip? Folks are saying B. What do we think, chat? Any dissenting opinions out there? Okay, folks are saying B. All right, we'll go with that one. I'm a little hesitant on this one just because we, had strip before. So I actually kind of I'm going to go back to the tape on this one. We did cover this, and this is one of those things where I'm not 100% on my recollection, and that's why I'm glad that this is a question, because it's a part that, hey, I'm not 100% on this one. So we're going to go back and just double check the answer here. Not that I'm doubting you, chat. I will give you all the kudos if this is the correct answer, but I want to be sure for my own edumacation here. All right. Should be pretty easy to find. Oh my goodness, X-Piker. Wow. Well, I'm happy to be the first person on your educational list here. Yeah, that's wild. But yeah, this is an educational stream. That's pretty much the only thing I stream, educational content. I don't always stream Python. Normally I stream web development. So like JavaScript, React, that type of thing. But I'm actively learning Python right now, so you all might as well learn it with me. I hope you enjoyed joining the stream today. It's good to have you here. All right, so here. Yeah, okay, that's why I wanted to check this. So a simpler approach is to use the rstrip method to strip write spaces from the right side of a string. Yep. So we can't get bamboozled, chat. We got to be careful. In this case, the answer is not trim. It's rstrip. Yeah. And I know that trim is a very common function in a lot of different languages. But in this case, what we're specifically trying to accomplish here is trimming the new line character from the right side. And Python just has a slightly different syntax for doing that. And it's going to be, and if we wanted to trim it from both sides, we actually saw that in the previous quiz, which I don't think you were here for that yet. But we took a quiz at the beginning of the lesson as well. And if you want to trim it from both sides, you actually use just strip. So it's a gnarly little syntax difference between Python and a lot of different other languages, in which case, instead of trim, you use strip to do essentially the same thing. Yeah. Yep. Aren't we glad this was a question, right? This is why we do quizzes. So you don't get got later on. X Piker says, I struggled to find something structured like this back in the day when I was learning Python. This site, yeah. I feel like in recent years, there's been a huge explosion of a lot of free, accessible coding content out there, which I think is just wonderful. I love these free resources because truly anybody should be able to learn how to code and they shouldn't have to pay $10,000 for a boot camp, right? But not everybody has the ability to, go to their library and check out coding books. And so what they need is something that they can access from their smartphone or from a cafe or, wherever they can get on the internet. And so courses like Python for Everybody or Free Code Camp or the Odin Project or 100 Devs are wonderful resources for anybody that can be accessed anywhere in the world. Yeah, and W3 Schools is good as well. They have a really good SQL editor for learning SQL. They have like a practice database that you can use. It's pretty great. Okay. Question 9. The following code sequence fails with a traceback when the user enters a file that does not exist. How would you avoid the traceback and make it so you could print out your own error message when a bad file name was entered? So we have an input here. It's asking for a file name, and then we open it. What do we do to gracefully handle failures in our Python code, chat? I don't even need to read the options here. What do we do to gracefully handle failures in Python? Yeah, Infinity, welcome to the stream, by the way. Thank you for being here. Yeah, we use try and except. Exactly. Try and except. Now, again, you could potentially get got here if you said try, catch, and finally. That would work if we were doing JavaScript, certainly. But in the case of Python, the syntax is try, except. All right, last question. What does the following Python code do? We're opening a file and then we're reading the file, right? fhand.read. So I think I might have just given away the answer there, but whatever. It prompts the user for a file name, A. B, reads the entire file into the variable inp as a string. C, turns the text in the file into a graphical image like a PNG or JPEG. Or D, checks to see if the file exists and can be written. What do we think? Does it prompt the user for a file name, read the entire file into the variable as a string, turn the text into an image, or check and see if the file exists? Yeah, I did give that to you a little bit, didn't I? That's all right. We need a feel-good one after the bamboozle in that earlier question. Yeah. So essentially what we're doing here, I agree with chat. I think it's going to be B here. Because yes, so this is an example of where you could have an answer that is technically correct, but maybe it's not the best answer. And that happens a lot, right? Most things in real life are not going to be black and white. So is this correct? Yeah. Well, I guess it's not even prompting the user, right? We're just opening a file. So no, that's not correct. That's wrong. So yeah, it's going to be this one. No problem. Now you might have a prompt for a file name being like, for example, part of this script. That's the first thing we're doing, but then we're doing more stuff with the file later. So that's what's happening here. We're reading the entire file using the read method into a variable as a string. And again, chat, what is the what should we consider before we read the entire file into a variable like input? What should we consider before calling the read method on a file? What do we need to think about? Yeah, I think the file size is probably the biggest consideration, certainly. Also, I mean, the contents, right? You really don't want to read anything into your code that you don't know what it is. You should, kind of understand what's in it first before you just, read that kind of thing into memory or read it into a variable. Also, Guacamole says check for valid file path. And yes, but that check is actually going to occur here. So the check for whether or not you can access a file is actually going to occur on the open function call here. So it's going to occur at this step. So if I was adding a try except block to my code, I would put it here on the open prior to the read. Because if it's a bad file path, it's not even going to be able to open the file and get information about it. So got to be kind of careful about where you're putting your try catch blocks as well, because where is the action actually happening? It's happening here. Yeah. Yeah. And same thing. Yeah. You got to check for, permissions. You would kind of get that here. ICE says, I want to sanitize the data somehow to block injection. Yeah, I got to be careful. Yeah, I tend to say try catch accidentally because I'm coming from JavaScript, where they say, it's try catch. And for me, try catch is easier to say. Like try except just does not roll off the tongue very well. But yeah, I apologize if I slip up and say the wrong thing sometimes. But I mean try except. Yep. All right. So good job on the quiz. Let's see if we got the questions right, folks. Hey, look at that. We aced it. Good job, chat. I did save our bacon a little bit on that one question, but still, good job, chat. Easy, yeah. First try. That's right. Guac says, 17 years, .NET C# dev here. Try except is hard to get a handle on. Yeah. Yeah. No, I actually, started out in SQL, then branched to JavaScript, and it was so easy to get into C# just because of the common C foundation between JavaScript and C#. So I built not a bunch, but like I built several desktop applications in C#.NET, and it was so easy after learning JavaScript. It was wild. That's the nice thing about coding, right? Once you know one language, you can just kind of glide into other ones super easy. Other than the weird little fiddly syntax differences. Sometimes I feel like languages, do things like different comment symbols or syntax changes just to mess with us, just to make you trip up. It's malicious. All right, last thing we're going to do is we are going to do the exercise. All right, it says write a problem that prompts for a file name, then opens that file and reads through the file, looking for lines of the form. Looking for lines of that match this, I guess. Dan says, have you worked with a language that uses errors as values? Go and Rust are the ones that come to mind, but I'm sure there are others. Yeah, I haven't actually worked with Go and Rust at all yet. I might do someday. But not at the moment, no. Guac says the hardest thing in Python is the required spacing. Yeah, that has been a trip, man. I've never dealt with a language that cares about white space before, and so that's the most common reason that I've been getting errors in my Python scripts is not doing white space correctly. So that's never been something that I've been concerned about. And anybody that has seen me write code here on stream knows that I am sloppy as heck when it comes to formatting. So this is really holding me to task. It's been a bit of a mental shift. All right. Anyway, we're writing a program that prompts for a file name and then opens the file and reads through the file, looking for lines essentially looking for lines that match this string. Count these lines and extract the floating point values from each of the lines, compute the average of those values, and produce an output as shown below. Do not use the sum function or a variable named sum in your solution. Okay, when you are testing below, enter mbox -short.txt as your file name. Oh, I see. There's no try catch or exceptions in Go and Rust. If the function fails, it returns an error value. Interesting concept. Okay. All right, so they've given us kind of a skeleton here. Input, enter file name. So we're taking that and we're storing it in a variable called fname. And then we open that file and then we loop through each line. So if the line does not start with this value, then continue. Otherwise, we print the line. Otherwise, we print down. Okay, so what is this function doing right now, chat? Of course, Silly. Thanks so much for being here. What is this doing right now? As written. Now, obviously, they wouldn't give us the finished version, right? So, can anybody tell me in English, what is this function doing right now? This is another good skill to have if you can translate a technical piece of code into business language. Get a little challenge for you. Yeah, that's a pretty good description. I like that. So Incredible says, prints every line not starting with, this stuff, XDS spam. Yeah. And that's pretty much what it's doing. It is doing a loop, right? We're looping through the file. We're reading each line. We're saying if the line does not start with, the string that we're looking for. Oh, thank you so much for the follow. Redbox12, good to have you here. If the line does not start with this value, then continue. So chat, what's the English, what's the continue doing? Quick pop quiz. And if you were here earlier in the stream, you already know the answer to this, but lots of new folks have joined. So so we're saying if the line does not start with this, what is the continue doing? Hey, Redbox, welcome to the stream. They're saying it goes to the next loop cycle. Yeah, Redbox, you're exactly right. We are restarting the loop. So we're not breaking the loop. That's the important thing. We're not breaking the loop. We're just going to the next iteration. And we're doing that because the line does not match the string we're looking for. So we don't want to print anything because it doesn't match. We're just going on to the next line. So the basic structure of what they've given us here is good. We just need to modify it to do what they're asking for. So it's saying count these lines. So we want to count the lines and extract the floating point values from each of the lines, compute the average of the values, and produce an output as shown below. Okay, so essentially what they're wanting is extract this value from each one of the lines and then compute the average. Okay, so we need the count so we can do an average. So because an average is going to be it's going to be the sum of each of these divided by the count of the number of lines. But it says don't use the sum function, so we'll have to kind of do it by hand a little bit manually, by keeping a total variable and adding to it, because we can't use the sum function. Yeah, we need a counter, exactly. We need a counter and we need a running total variable as well. So we're going to need two things. So if our line does not start with that value, then we continue. Otherwise, instead of printing the line, we're going to want to say, let's see, we're going to want to say, we're going to want to find the value of this floating point so we can use the same slice that we used in the last exercise. So I'm just going to grab that really quickly. Actually, I think it's probably still in my terminal history here. Let's see. Do I still have it? Yeah. So we can say, assuming we're on a line with that string that we're looking for. Oh, thank you so much for the follow, Bad Mario. Thank you. Good to have you here. Yeah, we need a counter and a total. Exactly. So we can, assuming we're on a line with a confidence interval, we can, I need to zoom out just a little bit so I have more screen space here. Sorry. There we go. All right. So we can say, all right, pause equals text. And this is going to be line. I'm going to replace text. So we're essentially going to say, all right, assuming we're on a line with a confidence interval, look for the 0 and grab the position of that 0. That'll be the first value that we want to return. And then we're going to get a substring and grab the text that starts at the 0 and goes to the end of the line. Now, I am making an assumption here that each one of these lines or each one of these confidence intervals is going to start with a 0. That might not be true. I don't know if that's true or not yet. I'm going to go with what we already did last time, and then we'll modify it if we need to. Yeah, exactly. As Icefire says, what if it doesn't start with 0? I don't know that. I'm going to YOLO it here and try that, but we might need to get a bit smarter with our approach. Yeah. Anyway, I can take a substring there and say, all right, start at the 0 and just return everything to the end of the line. So return the entire decimal. It doesn't really matter how long it is. So get the substring. And the reason I'm copying and pasting this is because the last chapter had the last chapter had an exercise where we had to do essentially the same thing, just grab a slice of a string like this with the same format. So I'm copying and pasting from that exercise that we already did. But feel free to ask if you're not sure what I'm doing here. Feel free to ask, and I'm happy to explain a little bit more. All right, so we've got our substring here, and let's see. I also need to essentially, I'm going to declare a count variable, and I'm going to declare I can't use sum, but I can use, what am I going to say? I'll say running total, or I guess I got to use Python syntax. So running _ total. All right. So count running total. We're going to initialize these variables outside of the loop. And if the line is a line we want to count, I'm going to say count equals count plus 1. So we add 1 to the count, and we add the numeric version of our substring value to our running total. So running total equals running total plus the float version of our substring. Okay, that plus that. And then instead of printing done, let's see, I want to print produce an output as shown below. So we say the word average spam confidence. And then actually, and I'm also going to say, I'm going to compute the average prior to printing it. So I'm going to say average equals running total divided by count. Oh, do I have a typo somewhere? Where's my typo? Oh, yeah, you're exactly right. It should be line, not text. Yep, that was from the previous exercise. Good catch, chat. Thank you. Okay, so we're taking the line, and line plus count plus 1, not count plus exclamation point. So for each line that matches, we add 1 to the count. Yeah, thank you, Incredible. Yeah, I just caught that one. But yep, that's another one. I do that a lot for some reason. And this is a good exercise too, because I'm not doing it in VS Code, right? VS Code probably would have caught some of this stuff. But sometimes in an interview, you're not going to have the opportunity to have error checking or warnings or anything like that. You're just going to have to do something on a whiteboard or in a text editor. And you're going to have to, know how to check your own code. All right, so count equals count plus 1. Find the position of the first 0, get the substring, convert that substring to a float, add it to the running total, and then once we finish looping through the entire file, we're going to get an average value, and then we're going to print our average. And we're going to convert it to a string. And we're going to, what do they want here? They want a space. I got to see how this looks. So, okay, so it's not a new line. It's just a space and then the value. Okay. So I've got a space here. And then I'm going to concatenate that with the string version of our average. What do we think, chat? Let's try and I am going to put this in VS Code. We're just going to see if it'll run there first. Yeah, that is primarily for readability. I do know that's a good point. You brought that up, and I did think about doing that. So XPiker says, is count equals count plus 1 a readability thing, or are you not used to plus equals? Yeah, so plus equals is a really useful shorthand if you want to quickly increment, basically reassign a variable and, quickly reassign a variable using its current value. You can use that shorthand. I did it this way just for readability because we're applying a lot of new stuff here and I don't want to get too crazy with it. Let's see, we're going to use, I'll just call this file parser. Do that. Oh, did I not copy the whole thing? Womp womp. I didn't copy the closed parentheses. Go me. There we go. Okay, so no warnings here. All right, let's see what happens. So we'll say pi and then oh, yeah, I didn't even type the name of my own file right. Boy. Okay. There we go. So it's going to ask us to enter a file name, and we're going to enter the name mbox short. And if you'll notice, I already have that file in this folder, so we can read it. So that's how we can do this test. Okay, and the answer we get is 0.75071855, whatever. I think that looks right, chat. 7501851, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I think we're cooking, chat. I think we made it. We might have nailed it. Let's see. All right, we're going to enter the file name. First try, chat. We got it. Yeah, thanks for catching me in my little silly mistakes there. First try? Yeah, thanks, RatsQ. Woohoo, indeed. Yes. Yeah, one of the things I really like about this course in general is that it does a great job of that spaced repetition. So we're calling back to things we did in the previous chapter or things we did 2 lessons ago or 3 lessons ago. It keeps asking us to recall that information and build on that for subsequent exercises. So this course is really well structured pedagogically. So in terms of like how it formats its exercises and lessons. And it really does a great job of making you go back to data that you did or to concepts that you learned a few lessons ago and reapply them just in a more complex way. Incredible says, but what about if the first digit's not 0? Yeah. And so another way you could do that, which I apologize who mentioned this earlier. Yeah, this is kind of not the best way to approach the problem if you know that there's a chance the first digit might be something other than 0, right? Because then you might end up with the wrong answer. So another way you could approach it is you could look for the first space. So like the first space right after the colon. And you could grab everything from the first space to the end of the line. And then what's the next thing you would do, chat? If you want to just pull the number or pull the values out of this whole area that I have highlighted, what's the next thing you do, chat? Yeah, we want to strip it good, don't we? Yep. You get rid of the spaces, and then all you're left with is the values. Yep. Yeah, so you could do a find, you could do a split. Yeah, there's a couple different ways to approach this. But the main idea is that if you didn't know the structure of the number necessarily, you could just say, all right, what is the commonality here? Well, the commonality is essentially that there's always going to be some spaces, prior to the number. And even if you weren't sure that there would necessarily always be spaces, you could look for the colon and then just go one character farther and use that as your starter, and then strip off any white space that might be there, and then what you're left with is essentially the values. Yeah. So probably an even more foolproof way to approach this would be, all right, find the colon and then go one in and add one to the index value. So this is your starter, and then strip off any white space if there is any, and then what you're left with is just the values. Yeah. Alrighty, good job, folks. We have crushed it. In my opinion, we have crushed it. We did 2 quizzes this stream. We got 100% on both quizzes. We accomplished 2 exercises. Yeah. I think we've done a lot of mental work today, but I think we accomplished a lot as well. All right, so what is next? Well, that's all we're going to cover on this stream. However, next stream, I think Dan's going to get really excited because we're just going to start covering lists and dictionaries. So Dan Can Code, we finally get to cover lists and dictionaries next weekend, and start looking at data structures in Python. Now, if you're familiar with other languages like JavaScript, you might know lists as arrays, dictionaries as more like objects, but a lot of these data structures are shared across languages, right? They might be called something different, but they're going to have a lot of similarities. And so again, this is another kind of a familiar thing we'll get to touch on and just see the differences in how it's applied and used in Python. Sometimes vocabulary is half the battle, right? Vocabulary and syntax. Okay, so we're going to take a couple minutes here. I am going to have to wrap it up prior to the top of the hour. I'm actually on call for work, and my on-call kind of starts at 7 p.m. when I actually have to start paying attention to stuff. So we'll take about 10 minutes here at the end of the stream just for general questions or whatever y'all want to talk about for the last few minutes, and then I'm gonna punch you off on somebody else. We're gonna do a raid, show them some love, and yeah, we'll wrap it up. Mattel says, that's funny, I've been working. Yeah, I don't, my job is generally pretty chill. I'm a senior data engineer, senior BI engineer, and I work for a university, which means that, universities move pretty slowly. My day job is generally pretty chill, but I do have to go on call like once every couple months for a week. And that's when you can get some real interesting drama and things happening, as if something fails overnight, you might get a call at 3 a.m. or, stuff like that. So that tends to be where the action part of my job kicks in. Incredible says, but what if there's spaces after the number? Yeah, well, that's where strip comes in. So just calling the general strip method on a particular, function on a particular string will essentially allow you to remove the white space from both sides of the string. So you can use L or R strip if you're sure that there's only going to be white space on one side, or you can just call the general strip, and that'll just pull everything from both sides. Yep. Someone has to watch the hamsters. Yeah. Well, the hamsters that run in their little wheels and pull the data from one system to another. Yep. I wish there were cute hamsters involved. X-Spiker says, what about with open, every novice is forced to use and every guy? I'm not sure I understand your question, X-Spiker. You can feel free to ask it in a different way, and I'll try to do my best to answer. Yeah, I'm not sure. Don't quite fully understand what you're asking there. Any other last questions, folks? We got about, we'll give it like 10 minutes. I am going to check my phone really quick. Just make sure nothing came up. Oh, that's nice. My mom texted me a picture of their Christmas tree. Looks lovely. Oh, thank you for the follow, Guacamole. It's great having you here. Oh, X Spiker says with open doesn't require you. It doesn't require. Wait. With open doesn't require to close file in a longer script. With open doesn't. Oh, with open. Okay, I get it. Oh yeah, okay. With open handles the file closing for you. Yeah. So one thing we touched on earlier is that using open, if you're writing to the file, then you have to, later you have to explicitly close the file later to write your changes to memory. So they're saying, I think what I'm understanding, X Spike, is you're saying that with open doesn't require you to explicitly close it later. If I'm understanding. Got it. Yeah, we haven't touched on that one yet. I'm sure we will at some point. Generally, with courses like this, they'll start out with the more basic form of the, they'll start out with the more basic form of the function, or sort of withhold some possible ways you can use it, just to kind of make sure that you understand the basics of what's happening behind the scenes, right? So by forcing you to explicitly close the file, it's teaching you that, hey, this is actually what's happening, that we're opening the file to read it, to do stuff with it, and then when we're done to make sure we write everything to memory, then we have to explicitly close it. Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting. Using like that with keyword, that reminds me of doing like a CTE in SQL, to say like with some data as whatever, you're essentially creating like a temporary table, and then you're doing your SQL, and then when you're done, that temporary table goes away. So that's interesting that the with keyword kind of has a similar usage here. Icefire says, Python for Everybody is an excellent source. So glad you're doing a series with it. Yeah, I love it so far. Even I love the platform, even the site itself is so well constructed. It's so simple, but it's extremely usable. Like, it doesn't have any more features. Like, it doesn't have a bunch of images or weird buttons. It's like super accessible because it's so basic. But it has literally everything you need in a learning resource. It's so well put together. I love it. Yeah. Incredible says, what would happen if I call open but I run out of memory? I don't know. You might have to try it on your machine. Try it with a super large file on your machine. I'm not going to try it on my machine personally, because I don't want to, crash my Twitch stream. But you can try it on your own if you want. Redbox says, how does 100 Devs work? Do you work for it? Yeah, so 100 Devs is, you can go to 100devs.org to see about it. But 100 Devs is essentially a comprehensive agency, but it's free for all students. So it's not like a thing where you have to like apply and maybe you'll get rejected, or you have to pay a bunch of money. It's completely free. It's open. All the resources are freely available on YouTube. As far as classes, we have a Discord with like 50,000 members or something like that. And it's organized as a nonprofit so that we can do some client work as well and earn a little bit of money for things like, website upkeep, server upkeep. We're trying to make it to a point where we can have an agency that actually pays students for doing some work. So like, you can choose, hey, I want to do a little bit of client work, earn a little bit of money while I'm learning to code, that type of thing. And so it's really, it's a nonprofit, and it's entirely free for anybody who wants to participate. And I am associated with 100 Devs in that I was originally a student of the program. So I participated in the last live cohort, which was in 2022. I learned web development. I had never touched web development before in my life. I thought web pages were magic. I was already doing SQL at that time, but I'd never done any other languages. And so I started learning web development from scratch. By the end of the course, after about like after I would say 7 or 8 months, I was building full stack web applications with the MERN stack. And then since then, I enjoyed the program so much. I enjoyed the resources so much that I have been a volunteer for the program since the end of 2022, teaching teaching lessons on web development, a mod on the I'm a mod on the Discord. I just love the program so much because it actually helps students learn and get jobs. Another thing that separates 100 Devs from a lot of the other free coding platforms out there, which are great. Don't get me wrong, they're fantastic. But 100 Devs is really heavily geared toward, okay, you've learned how to code, now how do you get a job? Because the unfortunate thing about so many boot camps and other resources is that they teach you how to code and then they kick you to the curb, right? They're like, okay, you learned how to code, you can be successful now, bye. And then it doesn't teach you, okay, what do I do to get a job? What do I put on LinkedIn? How do I format my resume? Should I have a portfolio? How should my portfolio work? What should be how do I network with people? How do I make friends on Twitter? How do I meet people who already work in tech? That type of thing. And so a major part of 100 Devs is geared towards that aspect of, all right, I can build a web app now, but what next? Well, one job, please, right? How do I get that? And so that's a big part of 100 Devs as well. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's actually what a lot of people do, Pittman, is they so William Pittman says, I've been in and out of 100 Devs, but the networking aspect has been tremendous. Yeah, we've got a lot of folks that join the program who already know how to code. Like they know web development or they know PHP or they are successful developers, but they join 100 Devs just because they want to learn how to get a better job. How do I, yeah, in my next job, how do I negotiate salary? How do I move up in my career? How do I build a bigger network? I'm stuck in a dead end coding job. Like, how do I do more? Or I'm a freelancer. How do I get a job at a company? That type of thing is a big resource for people too. So we have a wonderful mix of brand new people who have never coded a day in their life and experienced coders who are in it for the job networking, aspect of it. And so those folks often stick around to help the newbies pick up skills. So it's pretty cool. Hey, Psycho, welcome. Good to have you here. You're joining us just at the very tail end of our stream. But if you'd like to rewatch the lesson and all the things we covered today, Psycho, welcome to the stream. You can hit up the videos tab on my channel right now. And what we just talked about today has been recorded and will be saved on my channel for 60 days. So if you want to catch up on what we talked about today, check out the videos tab, click on that there, and you can review the content that we covered today, or you can join us again next week. We'll be right here next week, Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern is when the stream will start, and we will cover, next week we will cover lists. I do stream once a week. Yes, stream once a week, Sundays, 3 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for the follow, by the way. And DP VAR, thank you for the follow as well. Good to have you here. All right, folks, let's go ahead and find somebody to raid, shall we? Yeah, absolutely. Note that down. We'd love to see you back here next week with us. Let's find someone to raid. As always, if you have any raid suggestions, thanks, DP Bar. If you have any raid suggestions, feel free to shout them out. We try to keep within the software and game dev category here on Twitch. We also like to focus on smaller streamers who need an audience boost. So I'm going to get to the raid screen and then we'll figure out who we're going to pass y'all along to. Alrighty. Raid time. Alrighty, here we got the raid screen up. Oh, program alive. Oh, coding Tetris in JavaScript. That's rad. Yeah, I normally stream JavaScript. So if that's what this person is doing, let's check them out. Yeah, this he does not talk. Well, let's see what they're up to. What are they doing? Oh, that's dope. Oh, they're using Canvas. Yes. I've built several games. That's awesome. I think we're gonna check this person out. Yeah. I have actually built several games in JavaScript using Canvas. We've done what have we done? What have we done, chat? We've done Minesweeper, we've done Snake. Um yeah, Snake, we've done Jeopardy. So yeah, this is right up this is the kind of thing I love to see. So yeah, thank you so much for the suggestion, Psycho. Let's raid this person. Um And as always, folks, when we raid this person, please show them nothing but love. Give them the same vibes that you would give me. Make sure that you pay it forward in terms of the type of community that we want to share with the rest of Twitch. Okay. Yeah, of course, Icefire. It's great to see you. Thanks, Mattel. Let's go ahead and get this raid going, folks. And I will see you all next week for more Python. And yeah, I'm not going to be able to stick around for the stream, but you all stick around for the stream and let me know what they're doing to make Tetris work, because this looks absolutely dope. This looks so cool. I want to build what they're building. Alrighty, I'll see you all next week. Raid is starting now. Well, in 10 seconds, but Thanks for being here, Psycho. Thanks, JB. Thanks, Laylo. Thanks, Jasmine. See ya. Alrighty, raiding now. Bye-bye.